special meeting of the Granada Community Services District Board of Directors for Thursday, August 30th, 2018 is called to order. Roll call, please.
President Leonard Warren.
Present.
Vice President Barbara Dye.
Here.
Director Jim Blanchard.
Here.
Director Matthew Clark.
Present.
Director David Seaman.
Here.
And also on the table is Bill Parkin, our legal counsel, and Julia Hugo, the Assistant General Manager.
Thank you. General public participation. Do we have any comments for items not on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move to item 1, consideration of public input received on preliminary conceptual plans for Burnham Park at June 16th, 2018 event, and discuss next steps for design. Who's,
Well, I can speak to that. Let's deal you want it?
You have to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that most of you are aware that we held a special event on June 16th at the future Burnham Park, known as the Burnham Strip. And the event was basically for the purpose of getting the community involved and talking about the idea of it becoming a park and what amenities people are interested in seeing there. So what I provided in the packet for this item is I wanted to show the flyer that was distributed and posted around the community. There was actually a very good participation for such short notice that it took place. It got put together rather quickly, and there was a form that people were encouraged to complete while there in order to provide their personal input and their feelings. Kikuchi and Kenkel, the landscape architect, was there with their 3 conceptual designs, and they were there for everybody to see and comment on. And there were 73, I believe, comment forms that we received. And I tried to condense them, and I did provide them in the packet. Nancy Marsh from the Parks Advisory Committee did a great job putting together a report that's also provided, and a big spreadsheet that was really not presentable, I should say. So I tried to kind of crunch it all down, and because I think a lot of the comments are really important to read if you have time to see all the different ideas and things that people have to say. Granted, there were a lot of comments about issues that are not within our control, such as, crossing Highway 1 and things like that. But I think there was a lot of good input on people's feelings for, the options, some of which are shown on the conceptual design. So, Nancy, did you want to go over your summary report?
The spreadsheet was more a working document for me. When we got to the end of hour 5, as we were getting ready to break down that day, I think Steve turned to me and he said, "So what are you guys going to do with all of these basically freehand comments?" And we hadn't really given it a lot of thought till then, but it's something that in my previous life working, I used to do a lot because I was running employee surveys and general feedback things. So I volunteered and basically just verbatim put all the comments in the spreadsheet. That's what Julia has in your pack. And listed out what are all the amenities they mentioned, and then counted across, that's what's in the spreadsheet, of in each comment what amenities were mentioned. And some didn't mention any. They just said, "I like concept 1," or "don't do anything." And some mentioned as many as 15 different things that were on the list. So you can't draw, you have to take that as it is. This is just the things that people mentioned. And we asked them to identify amenities they liked and didn't like. There were not that many didn't likes mentioned. I think out of the 73, 18 had things they didn't like. Mainly, and it was only 4 or 5 mentions for things they didn't like. 5 mentions for I don't like parking. I don't want a lawn that requires water and maintenance, and no access from the highway. But those were only 4 or 5 each out of the 73.
no access from the highway, meaning block off the illegal
Yes.
ramp that people are using there to get the
Correct.
highway onto the property.
Yes, but there were probably far more people who wanted to improve the access to the highway than there were to shut off the access to the
Well,
highway.
we can get it shut
But
off by just dropping a dime to Caltrans.
I just, I marked that in the report as not within our span of control because it's not in the park, but we reported it, so we've got some data. So out of I put together then charts, just counting how many of each amenity, and I labeled some passive and some active and some neither, they're just sort of housekeeping. So on the positive park amenities,
Oh, wait, let's just stop for a minute
Okay.
because I think board members may want to make some comments, I don't know. And I also want to acknowledge that Steve Kikuchi is here from K&K, who did these concept designs, which were not there for people to choose among the three. They were there to just get people thinking about what could be there, and I just wanted to emphasize that that was the notion here. And also to say that this is a long process. Tonight, we're going to try to figure out what the next step is. And what Nancy did is amazing and really helpful so tonight, I'm hoping we'll talk about the various identified items that people want or don't want, and maybe just get some board direction about where we should go for our next step. And perhaps talk about specific items and see how we feel about them. If we want to consider them, see how they fit. Some things we may decide we don't want at all. Some things we decide we do definitely want to see on future plans. At this point, we don't even know if we want one plan or multiple plans for the next step. We know we need a lot more community input, so I don't know. I'm hoping that maybe Nancy will tonight also take notes. I know Steve's going to take notes and kind of add the board responses to our report on where we go next.
Let's be careful about not ending up with a camel.
I agree with you there.
Go ahead.
Camel, a horse built by, a horse designed by committee?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would reiterate that we didn't ask people to vote and we didn't ask people to rank things. So the number of mentions is just the number of mentions. It doesn't mean, there were some people who said, I like concept 3, and that didn't get any mentions other than concept 3. So I just want you to take these as some guidance, but not as definitive design criteria. Barbara, did you want me to just?
Well, wait, I
quickly
think
go
Matthew
through the
maybe wants
charts?
to.
Yeah,
comment
first I
first
want to
before we
thank
get
you,
started?
Nancy, for putting this together. This is very helpful, and thank you for the time you put in.
I'll be sending you my font size memo though.
I looked for the typos.
It's very readable.
My first question for all of us is, have we done enough to find out what the public wants?
I don't think so.
Obviously, the people who care and the people who are willing to be active drive any public process like this. But we have 70 comments now, and there's something over 5,000 people who live in the district. Part of those are in Half Moon Bay and are not concerned about parks, but, and I think we.
The population of Granada is at least 5,000.
Yeah, actually, that's right, that's the voters, There's about 5,000 voters. So we have some guidance here from people who did show up, people who do care and would become involved probably. And I think that gives us enough information to get like Barbara said, this is going to be a long process to get the project rolling, but I think we should probably think about a few more steps to
Absolutely.
get more input.
Right. But maybe we can give some direction tonight as to what the next step should be.
Mhm.
Do we want a plan that pulls together a lot of these concepts, or do we want, sort of what I'm thinking is a plan that has some of these concepts, and some of them maybe even movable? You know, like, we want to have, we need to talk about if we want a restroom, and where could it go, and do we come up with 2 plans next time, with some of the things that seem to have the most interest? But then how do they all fit together? It's the other piece of it. It's not just, we want this, 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 and this. It's also, how do they go with the site? How do they fit onto the site? So, What, I mean, it's really great that Steve's here and will help us take the next step, but I think as a board, we need to give some direction as to what we want to see.
Are you giving a presentation right now, Nancy? Or were you?
She was going to go through
Okay.
the report on the concepts, but I guess there might be some board discussion first.
Let's try the approach of having Nancy do the presentation and only ask clarifying questions during the presentation, save all the comments for when it's finished.
Okay.
The, this is a little self-explanatory, but I actually do watch some of these things on TV afterwards, so for the sake of the people who watch this on television later, there were about 9 different things that I would label passive park amenities. You might call them, some of them active. Interpretive signs, art, barbecues, picnic tables, benches, amphitheater seating, native plants, accessible and multi-use trails, and natural landscape. The word natural came up a lot. So in the numbers of mentions, I have to read the chart differently, the most popular was natural landscape, about 24 mentions out of the 70 comment sheets. There were 70 that actually wrote comments. There were a few that said, I'll send them later, and then they didn't. ADA or multi-use trails was the next most popular, and picnic tables the next.
Does natural landscape necessarily mean like that, or just not built up?
The words natural and native plants tended to go together. There was one person who specified, don't do anything, leave it coastal, terrace, prairie. But the rest of them just said, let's have a natural environment and native plants. Those words just routinely went together. Sometimes they were with, nothing we have to water or maintain.
I'll just say I've been out there looking for native plants, and there's like 5.
Well, there are many native plants out there right now.
No, there are not.
Just look for the sharp ones.
No, those are not native, those are weeds.
So all of those things, they're only on the list because somebody mentioned them.
Yeah.
I didn't look at what was on the charts and go looking for those mentions. They're just on this list if somebody mentioned them. So all of these things had between 2 and 24 people identify them.
What do you make of picnic tables getting more than twice the mentions of benches? Just picnic tables kind of like come with benches.
That probably was the assumption, that's why they didn't mention them.
That a bench is just like you see along the coastal trail. That would be my assumption.
Oh, okay.
I think all picnic tables have benches, but I think it's different from this.
But not all benches have
self-stand-
picnic tables.
Yeah, exactly, well said.
The active park amenities that got mentions were, and they're not in a particular order, in the order in which I found them, I think. Horseshoes, a fitness circuit, which got several mentions, and interesting because none of the concepts specifically had that identified on it, but it did come up several times. Bocce, playground, tennis and pickleball got 3. I will admit my husband and I are 2 of the 3. Informal soccer field or lawn. Some people said a place to play soccer, some people said a lawn. So I combined those for the mentions, more like an unstructured. I would say the ask was more for an unstructured grass area. Marina green was mentioned in mine. Volleyball, basketball, a pump track. That comment, they got 3 comments, and it was more like we need a pump track somewhere. And then the skate ramp or park got the most mentions of anything. And for the most part, this was leave the skate ramp, don't take away the skate ramp gets the most use. I would note that the skate ramp, and even on all 3 concepts, is sitting today in the easement and not on district land.
Caltrans.
It's on Caltrans land, not in the district. And most
That's
people
not an
said,
accident.
leave it as is, it gets the most use. And so, you could probably, from my reading of comments, make those 31 people happy if you just left it where it is and didn't incorporate it in the park. A couple people said, and maybe expand it, but for the most part, it was, let's just make sure you don't take away the skate ramp. The other amenities that got mentioned, Highway 1 crossing got a lot of mentions, and I just color-coded that as outside scope because we're not in charge of Highway 1. Parking got mentioned 17, about 35, 36 times. And mostly people said the same parking or don't take away parking. Still, 13 people said more parking, and about 6 people said less or no parking.
Looks
There
like
was one of the no's.
seven people said more parking.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
So, same parking one,
Right.
same or a little less, maybe,
Yes.
one, if you look at those numbers.
Twice as many people said less as said more.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
But the
And
most said some.
4 of those 13 people who said less are the 4 people who said no parking. So they're in there as
Now,
well.
that little font says same, not some.
There were
Same.
lots of requests for
Same.
bathrooms.
Sorry, you're right.
Given that 2 of the 3 concepts that we're showing them didn't have bathrooms, I was surprised we had 16 mentions for bathrooms and for bathrooms to have outdoor showers. Some of those were in concert with, in the parking, when people come back from the beach, they need a place before they get in their car to have a shower and go to the bathroom because they're using the bushes anyway. And some of those were in concert with, if you have a park and a place for kids to play, you need to have bathrooms. Some of what I just said was from talking to people in the several hours that we were there, and some of it was they were explicit in their comments. But I heard if you're gonna have a park, you need to have a bathroom, one way or another a lot. And then the last one, even though we didn't ask people to choose a concept or to vote on concepts, several of the comments simply said, I like concept 3, or I like 2 best, and here's what I like about it. And so I captured that. Option 3, which was the busiest, or had the most stuff in it. 10 people mentioned they liked 3 the best, 11 liked 2 the best, and 4 liked 1 the best, which was, I would say, the most natural. It's got paths and lawns, but not much in the way of active amenities. So the bias, I tried to be very objective and just counts up to there, and then I debated with myself about whether to add a summary, but just based on, if you took everything that got 5 or more mentions, you'd have a natural landscape with mainly native, low-maintenance, low-profile plants, a limited unstructured green lawn area to support pickup soccer games or kite flying or volleyball. You'd have trails that you could walk, bike, or skate on. Some people mentioned more than just walking on trails. With those drawn in concepts 2 and 3, the most popular. Picnic tables and benches, for sure. The amphitheater seating got actually quite a lot of good support. It would support ocean viewing as well as potentially having a band on a summer night. And then for active use, keep the skate ramp and basketball, playground, horseshoes, and bocce would be in there with 5 or more mentions. And I'm happy to take notes and basically add an addendum of board direction from there if you'd like me to.
So that's the end of your
Yes.
report?
Yes.
I think maybe what we ought to do is talk about all of the identified items one at a time, which means like a minute for each one. So any directors that don't feel they have to comment on any particular one, please don't. That sound like a reasonable approach?
Yeah.
So starting with passive park amenities, interpretive sign,
Yes.
as long as one of them says China 6,000 miles. Because I don't like the ones that are just way too serious, okay? You have to have a little whimsy in the interpretive signs in places like this.
Okay. Whimsical interpretive signs.
Well, some of them have to be real, wayfaring signs, I think.
Yeah. But I think some signs about the history, maybe even about the native plants.
Burnham
and so-
especially
Yeah.
also, and I think
Good. Yeah.
the history of the coast, I think in general, there's a lot of unique history.
And we do have that monument that was paid for by, was it E. Clampus something or other.
Eclampus vitus,
yeah.
Yeah,
there's
those
two of
guys.
them,
Oh, they paid for that one too?
yeah.
Oh, I was thinking one right next to the post office. Any other comments on signs? Art?
I want to wait and see. I like the idea. I've seen public art that's been really great and some that hasn't been so great. It can be expensive. But I also kind of like the idea of just thinking about it. At this point, not saying yes or no, but maybe thinking about some options.
So subjective.
I know.
Or what about,
That's
what
I'm saying.
about rotating, just a dedicated section and then different local artists, different schools, different rotating themes and just a kind of a section that would rotate out, you know, whether it's a weekend type thing or for 3 months and, I think in terms of
You
that
say
as well.
section, but I would say a spot.
Yeah, dedicated to that.
Now, what I'm concerned about is like that thing down at the far end of Halfmoon Bay, if it's still there, that an old Granada community member who's not here keeps referring to it as the tooth. Yeah, so, art,
So let's sort of put that on hold for the moment.
yeah,
Not rule it out, but
No.
not,
Art, for me, art would have low priority.
yeah.
yeah, well, it only got, what, like 2 mentions. Barbecue, there any issues with
I don't know, I was
the
thinking about
fires?
that. It seems like barbecues are a good thing to
Of course,
have.
they allow barbecues over in Quarry Park. and
Fire
that's
department's
closer.
close by.
Hmm?
The fire department's close by.
Put the barbecues on their property.
I would think we need them. I think that's a huge part of it, just the community coming together and people out there, the sunsetting, I think, you could get into a little small barbecue or even some of the newer parks where you see these nice, barbecues and kind of gathering centers around that where I think for sure that I think it's not really a park if you can't barbecue in terms of,
Right.
I don't know. I mean, that's,
They have a lot of use, in Corey Park, there's a lot of use, we have
Yeah.
the neighborhood that we have the
yeah.
party there is using the barbecues pretty much.
Yeah, I think it's almost the bigger question is, it would be taken, no matter what almost, it'd be taken so quick. It'd get into, you'd see other people kind of propping up their little portable barbecues all around there, in terms of, I feel like that would almost be the bigger issue is, kind of the derivative, around that there would be demand for it, so, what's our policy on?
Well, I think our ordinance code probably addresses that in some way, and so we would have to emphasize that
Yeah.
only the permanently installed barbecues are allowed.
Yeah. A lot of times, if you have a space like that, it's reservable. So
Yeah.
that gets complicated, but I think,
Well, then that ties in with item, 5, 4, Matthew's item.
yeah. Right. So I would say generally positive about the idea of some barbecues.
Have you considered the fact that might encourage evening use, whereas like right now, it's pretty quiet out there? Is that something we want where if it's not a park that's closed off at a certain time, it could be open to use at any time, really?
I mean, can it be closed and then?
I don't know how we would.
I mean, I think it could be, we could have hours and then just like anything, if,
Might just open up that.
if a cop felt like, coming up and questioning people because it was too many people or whatever, kind of just like, anywhere else now, I think they'd make it part of their patrol. I mean,
And I
but
think it'd be
I don't think it would
important-
limit.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that concern would, people could linger anywhere else right now. Corey Park, same examples, and I think that shouldn't limit the day use of it.
Well,
Or
once
concerns
there's
at night.
actually a usable park, or once there's just
Yeah.
about to be a usable park there, because we need to do this in advance.
Yeah,
I think that the board's gonna have to set hours, and I have to say, I'm always resentful of public land that says you can only be there between dawn and dusk. For one thing, good luck getting a good definition of dawn and dusk. But if you want to sit around there and watch the sun go down, at some point, somebody who interprets dusk differently is going to come along and say, get out, and I don't like that.
Well, it's generally interpreted as 1 hour before sunrise and 1 hour before sunset, and those are quite precise.
1 hour
After
After
sunset,
Sunset.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's normally
All
what
right,
parks
well,
do.
that'll be a future agenda item when
Okay,
when
yes.
we're in sight of a ribbon cutting on the park.
But one more thing about that, and in response to that point, is I think we do have to be worried about the north end where there are residences across the street.
You
But if
define
we have,
north?
that way,
West.
the west end. I mean, but we have a lot of area where there's just institutional uses across the street, and it would be less of a problem for neighbors. It's something to think about, because we want to be be aware of our neighbors and how it would impact them.
Delia, can you help us out on the picture where the woman was that kept complaining about the noise of the skate ramp until it was moved off our
Oh, she was
property?
in the apartment complex that's
So-
down by where the fire station is being built.
Here?
She's in the last apartment complex, yeah, the big one, yeah, she was upstairs, and I think the sound, depending on the wind direction, she got a little bit of that noise.
So-
This was in reference to the first one that was there that was smaller, just as a trial. And did you ever hear from her again after it was dragged off
No,
our
I've
property?
had no complaints whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I think it brings up, it's probably the first important decision in terms of the hours of it. I think when we're talking about benches and stuff, almost that section of it for sure. I mean, there shouldn't be a reason why people are getting, too late at night where it needs to be enforced. People are sitting around past sunset. Where I think, where I look at like this plan that Fran dropped off and anything where a circular running section, I feel like the coastal trail's great, but after it gets dark, it's dangerous to walk too far on the coastal trail and you're just deep out there. There's wildlife all over the place now. I mean, honestly though, I mean, you look at just, you're single and you're going out there. Certain points you're pretty, far from everything versus this could be a really unique late night, as the sun setting, running laps, whether you go and walk a mile or run a mile, a safe structure where people feel safe to come out in the community and exercise for a little bit, whether that's, a couple hours past sunset, because they just don't feel safe going on the coastal trail, going too far. They get 2 miles away from their house and it's, they just feel like they gotta go. So I feel like that is something as far as hours and then kind of into the design of it. I feel like this property kind of solves that need, that we don't really have in this community. If you want to work out at night, where do you go? Outside in El Granada? Where's a safe place to run?
Now, the one thing that I think the board previously agreed to is no night lighting on any of our properties.
Yeah. When you get in that, is that also no ground lighting at all? Or, if there's restrooms, there's obviously lighting around that, so I think,
Well,
you're right,
Maybe lighting that's just enough to keep you from tripping
Yeah.
over your shoelaces.
yeah.
And this, we don't have to decide this now, but I think you're.
No, I think, yeah, as far as hours, it's, I could go either way with it in terms of like, yes, in terms of that, the benches and
Let's not spend
barbecuing.
too much time on the hours, because like I said, that can be punted until we're in sight of actually opening the park.
Mhm.
Right.
But let's all the directors first, then Patrick's waving his hand. Jim, Matthew?
Regarding, what are we on?
Passive park still?
Well, I think we beat the barbecued.
Benches.
Yeah, so we got- Yeah,
Picnic tables and benches.
what's a board?
I'm not sure where we are.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, we kind of wandered around, so let's go back on track to the itemized list here. So, you already commented on barbecues, picnic tables and benches.
Yes.
sure.
I'm really antsy to have some ocean-facing view benches,
I agree.
which probably means that there are going to be a couple steps up to sit down because of the highway.
Well, if you have the amphitheater seating, the question would be, do you need benches? Is that doing it for you or not? Are those mostly?
I
Well, we
think
have-
sitting is in one location where you could have a
Yeah.
little performance, or you could.
We'd have to turn the amphitheater around from the way I've been visualizing it. I've been
Yeah.
visualizing it with the center of attention with his back to the hardware store, but if we turn it around so the center of attention has his back to the ocean.
Right, that'd be better.
Oh. In all these years, why didn't that ever come up? Yeah, okay, so that would be multi-purpose.
But I see some additional benches, and I do think it's really nice the way the current coastal access provides the opportunity for people to dedicate benches. I love the quotes on the benches. I
Yeah.
love seeing,
And I think there's definitely a demand for it, because a bunch of years ago, somebody threw down, I don't know, 2x12 or something across the safety railing support posts so that people could sit there and not sit on the sharp railing. So clearly there's a demand.
Yeah, and I mean, I look at it more, we start getting into big concrete structures, all that, I feel like it's more about just the staging area. By just staging the area a little bit with a little backdrop, a few little benches, if there's a big thing going on, people come out with blankets and whatever, but by, staging it, there is that. I think, somebody made a good comment about not, and it does tie in terms of an amphitheater, full scale, the way it was kind of talking about the one days, if we didn't do a skate park, an amphitheater would become the de facto skate park. And it was an interesting comment in terms of, that demand for skating is never gonna go away, no matter what. Caltrans could come take it off their property, we build an amphitheater, bam, that's gonna become the de facto skate park if there's nothing comparative to that. And it was an interesting comment in terms of, kind of thinking about that,
it's interesting, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so that'll have to be dealt with. Okay, why don't we take the last three together, native plants, multi-use trails, and natural landscape.
Let's take native plants and natural landscape together, and then trails separately.
Okay,
So I'm in favor of a combination of some kind of turf, hopefully low water, where people can play soccer and hang out and fly a kite and so forth, but I'm also in favor of a lot of native landscaping. And I know people have mixed feelings about native plants, but I think if we could get a healthy native plant community with a lot of wildflowers, people will really love it. I think it could be beautiful, and it could be, that's where some of our interpretive signage could go. I mean, it could be just fantastic.
well, let me ask you this about plants. The newly acquired piece almost certainly has a viable well. I know that the previous owner did 3 test wells there and didn't drop his application to build a house, which the implication I get from that is that one of the test wells was successful and viable enough water to serve a 3,700 square foot house. So if we can pursue that, that'll require a records search at the county. And trust me, those records are poorly maintained.
Well, there are some issues, usually
But
to
if
get
we-
good
if we
native
can get
vegetation
groundwater and not
established,
use
you
potable
need
water.
water, and for turf, even if it's low water turf, you're gonna need some water, so that's an issue that we're gonna have to deal with, but I think we can deal with it. I think if there's a well, that'd be great, if not, then we're gonna have to come up with a water source, but we're gonna need it if we're gonna, for other reasons too, so.
I think public recreation has water reserves, so we can call on it, but I was told years ago, don't plan on doing a big piece of grass that takes a lot of water, because the
Right.
community will get all riled up about using the water.
Right.
This is also why native plants are better, because once they're established, they
Right.
don't get watered. So,
I mean, you look at the bluffs, up on the bluffs there, they've done a great job of reestablishing native habitat. And it's beautiful, it's full of flowers, it's lovely. So, I mean, I think there'll be some time to get it established. And there are options for low water grasses that we could use for, I think we do need an area of turf where people can have a picnic.
But I would be interested to get those numbers, right? The price per square foot on water and everything else that's gonna, it's gonna go into annual maintenance budget to put a realistic amount of, okay, what could,
How much turf could we have?
yeah,
Yeah.
If we can do a viable well that covers the whole part of the year when
Yeah.
there's no rain. I think that would be really good, and the ongoing cost of that is minimal. Right, before I got the CCWD hookup, I computed my cost of water versus CCWD's cost of water and per gallon cost, not factoring in the fact that sometimes parts break and it costs you hundreds of dollars to fix the well. The cost of a gallon of water is 1/10 from a well versus CCWD. So, yeah, we definitely need to find out if there's a working well there, meaning a well shaft, because obviously there's no equipment in it.
Moving ahead.
Anything else on native plants? I guess Matthew knows a lot about that stuff. Okay, multi-use trails.
I actually have heard the request for a perimeter trail, and I think that does make sense. But I also like the winding trail through the middle, and so I wonder if we could have a combination of both.
Well, I started out pushing for the perimeter trail, and then when these were proposed, I said, yeah, okay, that might be good.
Yeah.
So I kind of like, I don't know, that one's too busy. I
More
kind of
like-
like that one.
What I'm more like Fran in terms of, I don't know about if that's realistic, but
I don't see
a
trails out
run.
there.
Well, outer, don't they have an outer, I thought you said there's outer
Oh,
track. Is that a trail?
Concept, you have-
I don't know.
But I do
Concept
like
three
this,
has
I
it.
do like the interior trail.
Yeah, I mean, to me,
The
that,
access to some
what-
of the facilities.
where I'm like, for me, it's like, it would be so unbelievable, an outer track you can come and run, you know, people would be running a couple miles a night, inner track for a walking area, and then the inner part of it would be for like, you know, either little kids or whatever, where you could just, you know, and you could have your kid there playing in the middle and while you're running and kind of checking on them, and, you know, I feel like however that's incorporated into design, I feel like that's critical in terms of that, you know, having a little, you know, and we get into the signage and everything, a little, you know, track that you could track your distance that you're running, and I really think I think you would, when it first came out, there'd be hundreds of people out there exercising that never exercise, you know, at night during those times that would be drawn towards it, and I feel like if we could get our heads around that,
well, let me suggest that we have to defer that one a little bit.
Yeah.
And get a solid answer from the county on what they're gonna do and when. And the when is, you know, I hope in my lifetime, and what they're gonna do. Unfortunately, I'm unclear on whether they've decided yet or not, because
About what?
I had thought that they were gonna put the parallel trail up through the Caltrans right away here, but then there's been discussion of running it, it's gonna come up here from Miramar, and then, so I think the current discussion runs it along here, and then back down either here or, you know, somewhere, I'm not sure where they get it back down into the Caltrans right away. So we need to find out what they really have in mind, and then, depending on what the county does, we may only have to build the other half of the loop.
yeah, that's true too, but yeah, no, I feel
Even
like,
if they're bringing it to here, we can bring a perimeter trail, but
Yeah.
then also have this really nice trail through the middle of it.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I think the perimeter trail, final discussion has to wait until we can get information from the county, so somebody has to take that on. Lisa Ketchum might actually be the best contact on the MCC.
I can check.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
Anybody else?
Comments on this side?
Oh, yeah, in concept three has the limit. So that's pretty much almost all of it.
Yeah.
So you can modify that.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, exactly, just modify that a little bit. But I think it'd be the most unbelievable place in the world to run, I mean, honestly, if you could.
Well, the reason I originally came up with the perimeter trail concept is that Balboa Dam Recreation Center in, what the heck city is that? It's not Van Nuys.
Oh,
Next to the
it's
405.
my part of the world, yeah.
Next to the
Encino.
405. I can't think of what city that is.
Messina or Encino.
It's a 1 square mile floodplain for the Sepulveda Dam, and it's dry about 99% of the time. And it's like a mile square with a paved trail around the 4 sides. Very heavily used by bicyclists, roller skaters, pedestrians. And so, that perimeter trail is why I got the idea for the perimeter trail on this property.
I'd rather not have it be paved. I'd like to see it be
Yeah.
DG,
Yeah.
well-maintained DG.
Okay, who are the bicyclists here? Can you ride normal bicycles on DG?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I think some concrete would be good for a path.
We need to have
You know,
several different levels or types of trails, because say we put in benches, particularly places that you can view the ocean, or picnic tables, those need to be ADA accessible.
Yeah.
And, but not all the trails have to be the same. We could, DG, even, if we could come up with some kind of ground cover that would
And maybe you could-
survive, we could have even vegetated
Yeah,
trails.
and maybe it could be the track that you run on, to your point, there's kind of 4 exit points that are all ADA and paved and everything, but then, as you go on, it's not all 100%, just kind of the main parts people are coming in and out of the inner
Well,
trail.
let me mention that, I guess it's on these two. The wider ones are intended to be ADA and the narrower ones are not necessarily ADA compliant.
I was involved with the project, I had to do the trails, and we put in, there's a paved coastal pathway, and then next to it a dirt pathway, and the paved part was meant for the bicycles, and the dirt part was meant for pedestrians. The pedestrians all walked on the paved part, and the bicycles all rode on the dirt part.
What's the gray area with ADA for all these project medians, what are
You
we?
have to meet it.
Depends on whether you ask me or the county. Okay, the ADA law as written says you have to make things ADA compliant where feasible. County's copy doesn't seem to have the 2 words where feasible. So the county insists that if they can't make it ADA compliant, they can't do it, and that's just wrong. Steve, it'd probably be best if you cover the microphone so people watching later can hear you. Yeah, and then we'll go to Patrick.
And just say, I'm really pleased that Steve was able to be here tonight, because he's the one who helped us with these 3 plans and is going to help us with our next step.
Yeah, ADA accessibility and compliance refers to if you have some special feature, some item, you have to provide at least accessibility to that item. If you have multiple items of the same feature, like multiple picnic benches, you only have to provide accessibility to one of those benches. So if we have a special feature, we have a picnic area or an amphitheater, we have to provide accessibility to that. If there are multiple picnic areas, we only have to provide accessibility to one picnic area.
Okay, that's.
That's helpful. Thank you,
That's
Steve.
a good detail that I hadn't been clear on. Up along 280 northbound, one of the view sites, probably the only one that's still open, they have the straight up ramp, and then they have the circuitous one, and the straight up one has this sign that says not ADA compliant or not wheelchair accessible or something like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, generally, when you have an ADA accessible, this even applies to commercial buildings, you're supposed to have a sign that, or an arrow that directs and identifies the accessible path.
Do ADA compliant paths or trails, does that always imply paved of some sort, or concrete or asphalt?
No, it can be decomposed granite, it
Yeah,
can be
that's what I
any
thought.
material that a wheelchair or a hard surface that somebody can walk on.
It has to be properly installed DG,
Yes.
and it has to be maintained.
So if you had a decomposed granite path and after 5 years it became extremely rutted,
Right.
and potholed, then you open yourself up to a disabled person filing a claim against the district because it's not accessible.
I would guess, I bet there's at least one person in the room that knows a lot better than I do on this one, but I would guess that DG is cheaper and easier to maintain than asphalt.
Probably. It's all about water. It's all about where the water goes and what the water does. If you put it in right and you have proper drainage. I built a lot of trails in my day. It's all about water.
I've seen deteriorating DG trails that are in much better condition than a less deteriorated
Exactly.
asphalt.
A lot of it, I mean, you know, roads are made out of asphalt, so they are more durable if they're properly constructed, if they have the proper base rock and material. They are more durable. They eventually need sealing or maintenance so that they get coated. Decomposed granite, depending on the use, is subject to more maintenance. If you have 100 bicycles a day on a DG path, it's going to need more maintenance.
I want to have a district ordinance that says we will not pay for asphalt. Concrete I'm okay with, DG I'm okay with, asphalt is just disgusting.
Can I just make a quick comment? Part of the discussion is going to be taking this to the next level. I know that with my experience in working with the Park Advisory Committee and we were looking at the mediums, they were considering hiring a consultant in order to plan it out more specifically, and I would imagine that would provide recommendations for pathways and the options there as well. So did you want to consider going that route and making it, you know?
I totally agree, but all at the same time, I mean, as we get into more, I feel like we need to take a step back in terms of just the, you know, we have these renderings and this kids' discussion. What Nancy did is awesome. You know, we're moving along in an organized conversation, but we need to have the difficult questions before we even get there is, you know, are we gonna have a skate park or not? I mean, you know, let's not kid ourselves in terms of leaving it on a project on somebody else's property that we have no, we have to have that conversation. We have to have the conversation, are we gonna have restrooms or not? Are we gonna have parking? If so, how many? And are we gonna charge for some of them?
That's the-
Okay,
that's the-
okay, and so all I'm saying is, that- but to me,
Okay,
where I'm getting at those that,
We'll get to that.
for sure.
Could I just mention one more thing, is that part of what Gates was offering when we were looking at meetings was to do a lot of the public outreach work. I don't know how much time PAC will have to assist in public outreach. I know that you were personally involved, Barbara and Nancy, in the last one.
And Paul.
And Paul and all, there were a lot of people helping, and I know that's great. Not everybody has the time to do that maybe in the future, and getting a bigger event together may take a little bit more work, so, you know, we may want to consider
Sounds
how the
like you're
outreach is
really
gonna happen.
speaking to a different agenda.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
well,
And in terms of ADA, just want to say, I think that the consultants that we have right now, though, you know, we will be looking at further proposals and projects, but they do have the technical expertise to discuss ADA issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
Let's hear from the public, starting with Patrick, on the passive park amenities, and then we're gonna turn the page.
We talked about a lot of things. My name is Patrick Tierney, and let's see, I don't want to, where to start? I think we have to consider that this is not a park that can satisfy all the recreation needs.
You mean like
in
Palm
the
Beach
area.
Park tried to?
Like a city park. This, I think, has more of an open space element to it, and we've got to keep from going with, we'll add another thing, another basketball court, and so on. I think the community, it would just be most supportive of a primarily open space with a few good amenities. Restrooms was mentioned, so I'll chip in on that. You can't have a park without restrooms.
Well, that's next page,
Okay.
I think.
Let's see.
Is it?
Yes.
No, it's
We
not.
talked about parking,
Yeah.
no?
it's down, yeah, it's the next page.
Yeah.
Benches. Benches are critically important for seniors. We may not be needing them ourselves, but they, again and again, are proved to be busy and used.
Thank you for the compliment.
Amphitheater. I think we've talked about in the PAC of having a summer music event, but where do we hold it? We have nothing in the district now other than Quarry Park, which we can hold even a very low scale, low key event. So that's another, I think, was talked about here, combining music opportunities and unamplified music opportunities with the other availability, things you could do in an amphitheater. When you start talking about amenities or either the park design, you have to be considering how you design it so it minimizes use by homeless. This could be a real attraction to homeless people.
It's already a problem right now.
And especially the old RV homeless people. So with that alone, we have to have closure of the parking areas at night, or else we'll have more problems than we have now. And I'm a big, conceptually, my belief is that we should not only be doing ADA, but we should be doing it right. And we should be a model for how ADA, how a park is designed to accommodate people with disabilities. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment on the passive park amenities list?
You know, I could. Should I go?
Well, you don't have to. I said anybody want to.
Yeah. I think I want to. Anyway, I was thinking, like, as far as...
Could you say your name for the record?
Oh, my name's Paul Kelch. Good to see you all. So I do think that there's ways to incorporate things in a passive way that have features like, you're talking about having a bench where you can see the ocean. Like if there's a mound of dirt, I mean, and that could be landscaped, and you could have a bench on top, and then you could ride, kids, you could ride their scooters down the hill, like there's ways to incorporate things into the design and, not be, not really like Pat said, keep it without trying to overdo one thing,
Right.
but just have like small aspects of things that if they're well thought out, they could work good. Like if there's any sort of wall, there could be some handholds on it, like even just steps like that. I mean, I'm thinking kids, really.
Yeah.
Like small kids,
And to your point, I'm thinking like at the zoo, they got the little animals kids could play on, and then later at
Yeah.
night, those could serve as little seating points where you go watch sunset, sit on the little animal right there, or whatever, in terms of,
Exactly.
and it's kind of blended in, whether it's rocks or other things like that, into the design of it. You almost
Yes.
don't even know.
Yeah, like that sort of like transition between passive and, active, I guess.
Yeah.
But I do think paths, I do think like a concrete path would be good. And I do think it's good to own up to the, to the plans for the path, not just say it's a county's problem. Like I really do think that's something that we need through there. We do need a bike path and access, a walking path right through that area, because there's really nothing to connect you to the Coronado stoplight.
Yeah, I just don't want to duplicate anything the county's doing. We need to mesh with it, but not duplicate it.
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Okay, so
Now the harder ones.
hopefully the note takers are sort of clear on which items on the passive park list we want to pursue harder.
Do you want me to recap a little bit?
Do we?
And we keep
Let's
it.
pass. Now I see Fran's hand up.
I guess if we're going to talk, Fran Pollard of Granada, about passive parks, I want to say one of the most popular things is picnic tables and barbecues. People love to do that. And I saw some comments, oh, you can't do that between the two roads. Oh, people will do anything. So it's one of the most popular, so I disagree that we can't duplicate what's in Quarry Park.
No,
It's
I
just a
said
law.
we're not going to duplicate the perimeter trail part that the county's going to do.
Oh, right, sure. But, but I think barbecue and picnic tables are probably one of the most popular things.
I think
People
we
love
all,
to do
we
that.
all agree with you. I don't think anyone disagrees on that.
Oh, I'm not expressing an opinion because I don't eat food where the flames touch the food.
Well, you could still have an opinion whether other people can eat food where the flame touches the food.
If barbecues are popular, I'm fine with it. Okay, active park amenities. How much can we say about horseshoes?
Sure.
I mean, I think, yeah, that's locked in. It's so low cost, it's like, you know, doesn't take up a lot of space. I don't see a reason why regardless, that's a lock to me.
Interestingly enough, Charlie Hall, who up until very recently lived across the street from me, he was one of the coastside leaders on horseshoes, doing it somewhere in Half Moon Bay, and I talked to him once about doing it on the Burnham Strip, and his interest in it was not even zero, it was negative. He wanted to keep going down to Half Moon Bay for the horseshoes. So it'd be interesting to see. I would guess it's cheap enough that we could set up something and see if people use it.
And the same
Yeah.
with bocce. I think we should talk bocce at the same time, because it's one of those things that you have to bring your own equipment. And eventually, if we had a community center where you could check them out, it might be more popular, and it is a low-cost activity that we could put there. I don't have any problem with it. I do think there's a lot of horseshoes and bocce place things that don't get used. But on the other hand, if they don't get used, they don't take up a lot of space.
Doesn't bocce require like a putting green quality lawn?
But yeah, a little more detail, yeah. I mean,
No, it's sand. It's just sand. It's like.
Sand.
Yeah.
It's not bowling, not what I'm bowling.
Can somebody explain in 15 seconds what bocce ball is?
It's one where you throw the balls and try to hit the other balls out of the way. And
try to
it's
get
just-
closest to the
It's
end.
You have
like,
to have
it's
a-
like billiards on the ground.
Yeah.
And you have a long rectangular narrow thing, and so two ends, and somebody throws the ball, and then the other people throw the balls and try to hit.
But more design detail, more space,
So-
more cost
very
than,
small.
Is
than a
that-
horseshoes.
Is
So,
that another thing that could?
but yeah, could potentially.
Is that another thing that would be really low cost, low impact to set up, and if nobody uses it, we take it
Exactly.
down and use the space or something?
Yeah.
Yes.
And to Nancy's point, I think to be even, I mean, that could be a 3-in-1 type thing.
Because
Where,
on a number of these, I think that if it's low impact to set it up and low cost to set it up, you know, we might just do it and see how many people use it, and if it doesn't get much use, then do something else there. So, you know, I would suggest that for horseshoes and bocce and whatever the heck pickleball is.
No, pickleball's different. Doesn't go in the same.
What,
in the
no,
same
but
bucket.
in my category of, is it cheap to set up and?
Pickleball, you see where,
No.
where they do a
It's a
pickleball
hard
court
court.
inside of a tennis court.
Ah.
So if we did tennis, we would do pickleball also.
It does
That
not
was-
go with bocce.
Yeah,
Tennis,
One of these things does not go with.
yeah.
tennis is gonna be really expensive, because
Yeah.
concrete's expensive.
Yeah,
That's-
absolutely.
You know, I know that.
Yeah.
It didn't get a lot of votes, it just, no.
Yeah. I-
Plus, you know, if you think about it for another couple seconds, we're not gonna put up a 25-foot fence there, and we
Yeah.
don't want the tennis balls on the highway.
Yeah.
I think that's one of our issues with all the
I think going down,
balls.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What, you
Yeah.
can't play tennis in the wind?
Not well.
Well, I think for this site, we have to realize that there's roads on both sides that people move the cars go pretty fast on, so you don't want anything that's gonna have people chasing balls out into the street.
Or balls flying out in the street on their own.
Yeah, true.
You know, that'd be the case for tennis at least.
Yeah,
Anything involving a bat and a ball.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think going down the list, I think the fitness circuit, it was interesting, Nancy mentioned that it was a reoccurring theme, and it wasn't even mentioned at all, and I've kind of heard the same thing, and I feel like myself also in terms of the, you know, whether it's, you know, some people have said a permanent type thing, other people have said space where you could do kind of a setup, you know, and I think there could be a kind of a blend of both, where there's some areas for, you know, whether it's pull-up bars or whatever else, kind of off to the side with a space where people could go and do CrossFit classes and set up little things.
Yeah, my impression
But-
is the park course at Marina Green is fairly heavily used.
Yeah,
So it'd be interesting to see if, you know, how much desire for it would there be in this community?
I feel like I've seen a lot of parks that have the equipment all around and you never see anyone using it, but I'm not saying I'm against it.
Well,
It
the
does
only
seem like a
place I've ever
logical thing. It's low impact, it's small area, and if it's something that people would really use and help them interact with the park, it seems like a good idea. It just.
Yeah. And well, to your point, I think that's where there can be a blend where there's it's the staging area, a few little items, and then maybe that's where that could be solved with the signage in terms of, whether it's, here's 12 CrossFit exercises you could do in this space, where, whatever, whether it's that or just kind
So
of.
not all the equipment.
Just show, the space where there's, where there would be, the ground would be good for doing, burpees and all the different type of CrossFit type things that.
If those could be started out minimalist, and if it looks like people are interested, then scale it up incrementally to see if
Yeah.
the interest stays.
I've also seen them funded by various
Because
companies.
I wouldn't want to put a ton of money into setting it up and find out nobody uses it.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
I think a fitness circuit or park course would get use. I don't know how much. The Marina Green setup is very popular, but there are 1 million people within a few miles of that location.
Yeah.
So, so you need a very tiny percent of that 1 million people to make it really busy. If we get that percentage here, there'll be 2 people once a day.
Well, I mean, or you could look at the others. I guarantee it once we do this, because I already see it on Murata. They do it at Quarry Park. There's going to be the CrossFit classes. All the different people that teach them are going to be teaching them, there, around there. And so I think, why not have a dedicated space that.
Would you say that there are people now?
Yeah, they do
teaching?
Quarry Park classes. They do Murata surf classes. They do all over, all over El Granada. They have different meetup groups. You pay, and the teacher comes and does. And so it's going to happen. It's a matter of why not
Maybe
have
that's a better
dedicated
thing to
place
have a
where,
space
where I think some minimal, whether it's a pull-up bar or whatever, some minimal, just encouragement, and kind of that's what makes it kind of the staging area, where. All the classes are going to incorporate pull-ups into their classes, whereas if there's not a pull-up bar, they're not going to bring something like that out there, where they will bring out some of the other weights and things like that.
Okay, informal soccer field or lawn. Let me.
Wait, you skipped playground.
Oh, oops, playground.
I'm all for playgrounds, and I love the idea of an innovative, more natural playground.
Targeted toward what age group, though?
Well, usually there's a young kids playground and then a slightly older kids playground is the way it works. I have been to probably 30 playgrounds in this general area with my grandkids, and I consider myself having quite a bit of experience. And my point is, I think having one here would be good. I mean, the Quarry Park playground's kind of a classic, plastic playground. The one in Moss Beach is great with all the climbing things, and it's all made out of wood. It's really wonderful, but we could use another playground, and I would love to see it be something sort of innovative with more natural materials.
Can we call it the anti-Moss Beach playground? I hate the
I
look of that.
love the Moss Beach
I
playground.
know the kids like it, but I hate the
love
look of
it.
it driving by.
And the kids love it. They got to
It looks to
climb
me
all
like
up.
Disneyland.
It's not, okay, whatever.
So, I think kind of 2 things is initial thing, play structure. I mean, I think I think it's awesome. How do we incorporate it into the property? I remember getting off Catalina Island. They have a beautiful pirate ship, and it's all blended in with, you almost don't even notice it because it's all, the way the design of it blends in with all the greenery and everything. And then you get up, and it's this amazing kids playground. So I think, point is, how do we blend something like that into the design? But then I think it's also kind of what Paul brought up in terms of, my kid's 3, a playground, he's bored of it after 2 or 3 times. There needs to be multiple other uses, little animal creatures that you go and inspect and check out. And, almost to the point where there's 10 different activities so that every night he's going to be saying, let's go to Burnham Park. Because he's bored of Quarry Park already, because he's done all those things, versus kind of some of the other structures where I think you could get done moderately in terms of, you know, little, you know, simple play structures that kind of capture the imagination of kids in terms of, you know, a place where they could, you know.
Well, let me toss a suggestion at the board. I'm not sure the Burnham Strip is an optimal place for a playground. So assuming that we get, this is not to scale, is it? Assuming that we get this 10,000 square foot piece here from the fire district, we built a fairly small office building in the back corner, and this was a plaza. We'd probably get the fire district to let us put the playground over here, even though the property line at the moment is right there, but potentially that could be moved even if it can't. The fire district is not gonna have any use for the part between the riparian area and the C1 that we're hoping to buy from. So I think that would be a much more appropriate place.
And it could be for a big one. Where I'm kind of getting at is I think there's a way that it could, you know, a little sunken ship, the way that it was done, where it could blend in with the whole theme of the park, and maybe not be the greatest play structure ever, but being another element where there's a little slide a kid could go down on the backside of it, and you know,
Something they can climb.
yeah, something that they could play on. And yeah, to your point, maybe there is another parcel for a huge.
5-foot block wall on our side property line.
Yeah, I'll let my kids climb anything they wanted. Yeah.
Playground,
Playground?
thoughts?
I kind of like your idea, I mean, you have a playground, it's the swings. I mean, you're like the must-have, I mean, I guess that's what the most used in Quarry Park is the swings. And that may be, what would that be enough? What do you do more? I mean, I could say, I mean, I kind of have the idea of having it in the swings. It's less traffic there. It's easier, it's closer to the town, closer to the people.
Well, swings have one advantage, which is no flying objects out into the street.
Well, I still like the idea of some kind of natural climbing structure for kids on Burnham Strip.
Have to figure out where to put it with minimizing impacts on the view corridor.
True.
And one of the things that I feel pretty strongly about, and somebody who's not here would scream bloody murder about it, the way she puts it is no giant chunks of colored plastic.
I agree with that.
Yeah. I think a playground is almost as essential as a restroom. And I think we could have a reasonable sized space that would have portions that are for really small children and up to older kids, 10, 12.
Several of the playground comments did specifically request big and small kid areas.
I don't know what age that means.
Usually it's 2 to 5 and 5 and up.
Okay.
And the 3-year-olds all want to go in the 5 and up playground.
Well, I'll be finding out some of the stuff. I have a grandson who is 2 today, I think. Okay, any, okay, pump track.
Wait.
Can I do?
You're jumping way ahead. What about tennis and pickleball?
Yeah, I don't read small print very well. Okay, I already commented, I don't think that you can put a tennis court there. I'd be totally opposed to that location for a tennis court.
I don't really want to see the hardscape like that.
Should be there somewhere, but not there. And I bet the tennis court would be booked up solid if we had one, but that's not the place to put it.
And pickleball is like tennis but smaller, but I also, just the idea of a big hardscape court seems like this is the wrong place.
Aren't some professional tennis things played on grass?
True, but.
They need to play. But as someone who played tennis for years, this is probably a miserable place.
And
Too much wind.
You still have meters?
And if you don't have the 20-foot fences,
Right.
it's really inconvenient. Have to chase those balls. You can't really play tennis unless it's enclosed.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of giving up any active rec. I look at it as how do we minimize resources for the maximum number of people? And I look at tennis as, we're gonna be putting in a lot of resources for max 2, 3, 4 people could be, and then it's locked. I guess you could do doubles and, it's done versus some of these other things. You have multiple people using, and so I feel like, and I think Corey Park would probably be a better place in general, or somewhere.
And based on my
So-
experience, I'm gonna guess that the cost of laying down the concrete for a tennis court is somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000.
Yeah.
Mostly for the concrete.
Well, and then you also have to manage it, because then you're gonna have to have reservations.
Yeah. So I think in terms of Burnham Park, we can completely scratch off tennis, and does that also mean pickleball?
Yes.
I would say so, yeah.
Informal soccer field or lawn, why is that one line item?
So several of the people who mentioned lawns said a place where you could have a pickup soccer game. They specifically said, don't have a formal, I'm sure I should say this differently. Most people said don't have a formal field for soccer, but have a place where you can have a pickup game of soccer. And so, given the number of mentions, with only 6 between the two, I combined them together.
Can you do soccer with a 3-foot fence?
You see kids doing soccer with no fence, they just kick a ball around.
And
You can get those flip-out goals.
Yeah.
The people do it with
I'm
cones,
just
yeah.
thinking about balls flying out onto Obispo or Alhambra.
Or the highway.
Hmm?
Or the highway.
I think if we-
Highway's further away.
To that concern, I would say if we had a dedicated space, we could control that more and put that in the highest and best space for that. If not, it's gonna happen anyways, in terms of kids are gonna go out there with their cones and set up a goal. And if we don't have dedicated space, we run the risk of getting that closer into the highway or places where we probably wouldn't prefer a soccer game going on. So I think that's where kind of, it kind of stages the area where it's like, okay, we're not encouraging soccer 7 days a week, but if there's gonna be a soccer game going on, this is a good area where it would be,
Well, one of the regulations I would suggest that the district would have to adopt, assuming we have a grassy area, is under no conditions any scheduled and organized soccer games there, because they attract too much traffic. Spectators and parents.
But one of the concepts for this for a long time has been some area of lawn that could be used for picnics and for, kicking around a soccer ball, flying a kite. Yeah, flying a kite, all that kind of thing.
Volleyball.
Yeah.
Right.
My
Yeah.
inclination is not that much lawn, just because of the watering and everything else, but I see the need for some of it, and I'm fine with some lawn that could be used for these various things. I think that's a really good
Now,
amenity.
if there's a sandy beach right there, are people gonna come to the Burnham Strip to play volleyball?
Say that again?
Are people gonna come to the Burnham Strip to play volleyball when there's a sandy beach right there?
I mean, I think we don't, that's where I feel like, that was the next one on the list. To me, compared to the tennis court, I feel like that's a great example of low cost, easy to do, and you got multiple people involved. That's 2 courts is basically, that's multiple groups of people to.
The volleyball is attractive because there doesn't have to be anything permanent there except the sockets on the ground with the
Yeah.
poles. And so, when you're done playing, you pull up the poles in the net and go away.
Yeah.
It feels as for some of it, we have to think about whether it all fits. If we incline towards saying yes to, for example, to volleyball, have to see if there's a place on the lawn, is there a volleyball place, does it all work? And that's part of the next step, but I think if we can make volleyball work, it does seem like a low-impact use that would be appropriate.
Yeah, I'm just curious if people would actually do it there, if they could, when they could also go on
But
the
it's
sand.
not-
It's too hard, because you would take up the whole beach of people trying to walk by, and if you look at surfers, how much shoreline there is, if you set up a net, you would look like the biggest jerk ever, just like taking up the whole beach,
Yeah.
you know, and that's where,
And somewhere at the end of the agenda, we also have a report to find out what happened with the other volleyball thing that
But
we
I,
agreed to
yeah,
support.
yeah, but I mean, this is under our control, and I look at this as, who knows what happens in the future? We, you know, even like we talk about a skate park, that could be decades away, even if we supported that. You know, the tennis court, volleyball to me is like even, it's that low hanging fruit where there could still be future versions of Burnham Park that maybe replace that volleyball court, but on as early as possible, that should be, you know, as far as breaking ground, the easiest thing to break ground on. And you know, and then,
It fits in my category
Yeah.
of stuff that's cheap to try out.
yeah, if it doesn't work out,
Demand it.
it's, you know, we're talking thousands of dollars compared to some other things.
Well, it's basically, you know, buying the two poles and the net and getting the permanent sockets put in the ground.
Yeah, and then getting the sand, which, you know, remember that was,
Sand.
remember there was an issue with certain types of sand they needed that they got into when they tried to do
I'm not sure we're
theirs.
gonna try and maintain a sandy patch there, the sand's not gonna stay put, right?
Right.
You're talking about the beach one.
Yeah, I'm saying if this was sand, then, you know, I guess,
It's gonna have to be done with whatever kind
Okay.
of plants we can come up with, but no sand. Sand will end up on the road or against the pump station or something. It's not gonna stay put. I mean, at least once a year, they close the Great Highway to move the sand back onto the beach.
Right.
yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna kill you know, I'd be fine with whatever, but I just feel like, yeah, in general, it's something that needs to be part of the earliest project, and then,
Let's see if we can make it work.
yeah.
Well, we can make it work, see what the demand is.
Mhm.
You guys okay with that approach on volleyball?
Sure.
Yeah, I agree about the sand, because that's, to make it beach volleyball, it has to be enclosed.
Mhm.
And then then that's a single use. If we put lawn or something like lawn out there, if people show up with soccer balls, they can use it. People show up with volleyballs, they can use it, whatever.
And, you know, again, I'm thinking about Marina Green, which I haven't been to that many times, but I've been taken there specifically to be shown concepts for what we could do here. And that's why a small number of us have referred to it as Granada Green. I don't know where Burnham Park really came from. So, yeah, at Marina Green, there's some section with 2 or 3 sets of holes for volleyball poles.
All right, well, seems workable.
Yeah. Okay, now, have I skipped anything if I go to basketball?
No.
Again, tons of concrete, very expensive.
I'm surprised by, I'm wondering why basketball showed up, because we see it over here. And I thought volleyball would be much more popular than basketball. I guess, you know, for some people, get ideas, because it's on here, I don't know. I'm surprised by it, see, how
Well,
popular it is.
It's because our
Number 2 has
consultant
half
put it on.
court basketball as well.
Yeah. Over here.
Oh, the
So we have 2 basketball.
Where's,
I guess that,
yeah, right there.
some sort of basketball court.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, if I sort of listening to, why did pick basketball over volleyball? A lot more demand for volleyball.
So let's see,
To me, it's surprising.
Right
Right
in
in
the
the
neighborhood,
Warriors.
we see a lot of
Yeah,
basketball
there you
groups.
but there,
Yeah, that's true.
what, about 16 or 17 people
I know, I'm surprised
said
by that.
basketball?
So,
Yeah, I kind of think we need some other place for it. You know,
Uh.
some of the things that we can't do well here, we could likely negotiate to do it on school grounds. You know, school district doesn't have the money to maintain these things, and we do. So if they can provide the land.
School has it, I mean, school has a basketball court outside.
Some of the school facilities, in particular the soccer fields, get beat to death because they're the only ones around. And, you know, so if we can provide support for expanding it or maintaining them better or whatever, that might be a more practical
you know, I could look at it, you know, as kind of, you know, as being a longer term thing that maybe doesn't get put in the kind of the first phase of which is more kind of the low cost, low hanging fruit type things. But then you know, even as you guys were talking, I'm thinking out loud, I mean, it would be a pretty world-class place to be able to shoot a basketball. I mean, that's the type of stuff where you would have kids that started shooting basketball 5-6 hours a day because it's just such a unbelievable place. You know, but yeah, I mean, I'm also a fan of El Granada School has the worst basketball hoops in the nation. If you've ever shot a basketball hoop at El Granada School, and it's been like that forever.
Okay,
So
but-
so my point is like, yeah.
Why don't they fix
Yeah, exactly. You know, if we're gonna talk about demand for basketball, there's that, okay, let's just get some good hoops at El Granada School and start there and worry about something like that later.
So we could put that high up on the list of things to do is talk to the school, see if they would be interested in us funding maintenance or upgrade or
Yeah.
whatever. I haven't seen them, but I'll take your word
For
it.
sure. And yeah, I think absolutely in terms of
And that can't be. right.
testing the man for real basketball that you can have a real full court game on, and then yeah, years down the road
So
maybe.
how many hoops does El Granada
There's
School
4,
have?
but yeah, each one's completely different heights, everything. So you need to basically
But
build
if
4
they're
new
just
ones.
decrepit, you know, we can fix that,
Mhm.
assuming.
And then there's a maintenance part of it. The nets start falling off and
Well,
things like
if
that.
the school district's interested,
Yeah,
I think, you know,
for sure.
that's a good bang for the buck and
Absolutely.
fairly short-term solution.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Or fairly near-term, I don't want to say short-term, fairly near-term solution.
And there
Yeah.
is access to that part of the school on the weekends, so.
Yeah, so how would we go about, somebody would have to contact the school district and express our interest and see if officially they're interested? Is that something that you would do?
Yeah, I can call the, the superintendent.
And if they're interested, see if they can give you a ballpark cost of doing it? Because they would probably know, I would hope. Okay, hump track.
I think we've got some other options for pump track. We all know how important it is, and it's the #1 active recreation priority for this community, but I don't know that the Burnham Strip's the place for it.
Yeah, I would not want to see it on the Burnham Strip.
I'm pretty sure they're going to put one in Quarry Park.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, well, we're going to very specifically discuss that somewhere later on the agenda.
And so, yeah, I mean, here's where I kind of agree, and then, but also very concerned is, I kind of, you know, okay, we scratched tennis pickleball, we hold off, or for now, scratch basketball, no pump track, and so we're getting rid of basically all the best, you know, real active recreation, and I'm fine with that if we're replacing it with a multitude of other options, you know, when we get into the fitness circuit and some of these other things in terms of, you know, saying, okay, we could hold off on that or get rid of those, but there needs to be a supplement for that in terms of activity-wise, and so that's where, you know, that's just my concern in terms of saying, okay, I'll be fine holding off on that, as long as, you know, all these other active things that we're talking about are gonna be, you know, are gonna go through. So that's my kind of comment on that, you know, just a caveat.
Skate ramp or park, yeah. Now we get to the fun part. I wish we had another place to put it. I mean, I understand that it's gonna be very unpopular to not have it there. Now, maybe that would be less of a problem as if we actually had someplace to put it, but we don't. So.
what do you mean we don't? I mean-
Well, where else could the skate thing go?
Why does it have to be there?
Well, it could be somewhere else on the property. I happen to particularly take issue with that spot. as far as I'm concerned, the people that plopped it down there without permission on land they didn't own, they put it, as far as I'm concerned, in the absolute worst location in terms of impact on the community. It's right smack in the center, the exact center of the view corridor. So it's absolutely the wrong part of the property for it to be on. I don't want it there.
Well, there's a lot of design work and so forth on skate parks. There's a lot of skate parks being built. It seems as if it gets a ton of use. It's not particularly attractive where it is. I don't know. I could support if there was the right spot within the park to move it to have a properly designed skate park there. I don't know. Something I'm not sure about. But I incline toward thinking that if we could find the right place, that maybe that is something that we should continue there.
Yeah, but not in that exact spot where it is now, is what I'm saying.
Well, it's not even
We'd be moving it onto our property.
it's not on our property now, and none of these renderings, and that'd be like me talking about redoing my house and forcing my neighbor to do a bunch of upgrades so I could sell my house for, if it's not on our property, it's hearsay in terms of that's showing that we have no support for it long-term and that we don't have a sustainable solution. Because eventually, and here's, if we're gonna look at the data, this clearly shows by far and away the skate ramp and park, the support for it. What I find most interesting, which is so funny about Granada, there's obviously a younger group that skates that's strongly supportive of it, but some of the strongest support comes from, these older retired couples that have seen people using it for the past couple decades, and they're like, oh, we can't get rid of the skate park, we need that skate park, and they're drawn in and they're passionate about it because they've seen little kids grow up over time and become adults and right in front of their eyes just skating on it. And so there is a nostalgic connection to that skate park where that is part of our history. Burnham has a history with what he did. That skate park became part of Burnham Strip history and the future of the park. And if that comes down, you better believe.
We're not arguing for getting rid of it.
Well, but I'm strong, I will say that even when we don't have the skate park on our parcel. So for us to even say, to deny that that's not the number one most popular thing, that's the number one hardest conversation we need to decide on is, that could take 10 years plus, and maybe it's more about just having this as the future potential skate park, because that would be the last thing.
What specifically are you proposing? And the only answer I won't accept is leaving it in the middle of our view corridor.
Where somebody brought it up, and I think it could be cool, especially because there's nothing like it. There's the skate ramps and the parks that are built up. There's also the bowls where you skate down into the bowls.
Pacifica.
Yeah.
I really like that one.
And
I stood there for 20 minutes and watched.
So that's something where I heard that, it's like, well, that's perfect. Because if we do a skate park and we just copy Half a Bay, it's like, what a joke that is. Versus a bowl is something unique that now on the coast, that's something that really is new and innovative and gives somebody, kind of a different alternative. And I think to the viewpoint, instead of people being, the structure and everything blocking so much, you'd barely even see people. They would just pop up every once in a while. And so I think there's a way that you could squeeze that in. And like I said, as part of that would be the last thing that ever happened, in terms of the phases of it. But dedicating some space and say, we support the skate park, we're behind it, we're gonna dedicate space for it for the future Burnham Park. And that skate, this might get launched in 3-4 years, and that skate park might come 12, 13, 14 years from now. But showing that we support a sustainable alternative, because right now, the way these 3 renderings exist, they're either somewhat misleading or they're our way of saying we don't support a skate park on our property, regardless of the input that people are saying.
These concept plans, none of them were intended to be an actual specific proposal.
No, I understand that. No, absolutely. But that's why I'm saying it now in terms of, because even when people saw it, they're like, oh, that's nice. I'm glad you guys are keeping the skate park. But the way it's drawn as now, we're not really, as a board, we're not supporting the idea of a skate park. We're just saying, don't put it on our property, just put it on somebody else's.
Well, I just supported the concept of skate park.
Let me.
Leonard, are you advocating putting in a skate park on the Burnham Park so that the big ramp goes away?
Yeah.
So you're for a
Well,
park, I mean, a skate
I'm
park?
for supporting some sort of skate park, you know, the exact style to be determined later. But something that will fill the need that that thing fills, but in a different location.
But,
Hey,
but somewhere on the strip.
Yes.
Yeah, probably, since we're
Right.
not.
I'll go
Well,
say,
As Dave mentioned, you know, designed parks don't have to stick up nearly as much as that ramp does. So, you know, they could be
Maybe we need to
much less
see
visible.
some photos of more lower profile things.
Well, I think that's part of the design of it, but I think if we're saying that we'd like to look at possibilities, how much space would it take? It's actually a pretty big property, the length of it. Maybe there's a spot that works for that.
The one that's there
Because
right
it's
now is
certainly-
probably using about 20 by 20 spot.
And I will say that I stapled a notice onto the actual skateboard ramp.
Well, that did a lot of good.
Well, I mean, those who spoke up may have been slightly overrepresented, but I still think that it's an honest enthusiasm for that use on the property, and it doesn't involve balls going out into the street, it doesn't involve
Right.
high walls, and
Well,
it's.
I don't know, they have put up something much higher than they originally told us.
Right.
on it.
Well, I'd just like to I'd like to see more about how it could potentially work on the site, because it seems like a popular use that maybe we should really consider, particularly with your point that we've kind of come down against a lot of the other ones, but this is one that has a lot of support.
Yeah.
yeah,
So, Matthew,
Let's do it right, though, if we're gonna do it.
how far below grade can we go before we hit water in wet years? My impression is that in the wettest years, the water table is at the surface.
Yeah, it probably is there, but you're talking about a concrete construction, so
Yeah.
it would be sealed underneath. But,
Right.
yeah,
I still
there,
don't want it to float away.
there isn't much, you know, there was actually the worry about that for the wet weather
Right.
tanks. Yeah, it is a real
I
thing.
did see a TV program on a concrete boat that somebody built, but it didn't work very well.
and to me, I mean, that's where I can get back to, you know, what's our, as a board, what's, you know, are we gonna look at what people are telling us and the data and the support of it to say, yes, this is a future space of a skateboard park, while we explore, because I even look at it, a lot of these people, you know, I've said before, the greatest skater in the world, you know, is on the coast. Him and his brother talked about doing thousands of skate parks. They would spearhead the effort. You know, they're in Granada, and so I look at that as like, okay, if that happens, we could do an epic skate park of our most epic skate park of all time. If it doesn't happen, we're looking at something very small scale that, you know, but it's the idea of saying, we support this, we're behind this, this is some general space where it could go, and then exploring kind of those, whether it's a little bowl or it's something simple, you know, that just, that allows a section for people to skate.
So what would the board think of punting the location and style question back to the advisory committee?
Yeah,
And remembering that
For
the
this
board is
one
still,
thing?
remembering the board is still the final decision maker.
Yeah.
but,
For this one thing, I mean,
Well, the skate ramp was an important
I know, I think,
thing.
yes,
so-
it is, but I think this more goes back to, we have to figure out our next steps, but they've got a lot on their plate for medians and a bunch of other stuff. Just to take one piece of this project and pull it out and send it there doesn't make sense to me. I mean, we either,
Okay.
well, he's saying he needs to get better educated in terms of he can't, and to that point, I kind of agree in terms of let's realistically look at some of these different options.
but that's
that,
what maybe our landscape architects would do for us. I'm not
Is
sure.
that
What do you-
something that you would feel comfortable with, making a recommendation on where in here would be an appropriate place with the least impact on the view?
Sure.
And how much space it would take and, you know, what, if anything, constraints there are. I mean, one of the things I like is the constraints map, which we didn't even ask for, but it really helps us look at it.
Yeah.
And so to consider the constraints in this kind of thing, I think maybe that is kind of what the next step is. What are the constraints on all the things that we've been positive about? What are the things that we need to think about in terms of locating the various things that we've said we want on this property?
Yeah.
I think what I need from the board is whether it is a significant feature, as David mentions, or if it's something that just replaces the existing
Yeah.
now in scale and size.
At a minimum, I think the more I think about it, we need dedicated space to say, if you're a skater, this is where you can skate. Go to Embarcadero and all those areas where, those aren't skate parks, but people have taken them over. And those are amphitheater seating. Years ago, when there was board meetings, no one was saying this is gonna be our future skate park. They were talking about amphitheaters and seating, and that's where I say, if we don't have the
All right,
dedicated
let's
space,
get it.
then we don't even know, but
I'm looking at the time.
Yeah.
We need to.
And where I was gonna end it though is saying the dedicated space could be as simple as a concrete, a concrete skate path with a little few things to jump and
I'd rather see a
ollie
proper
off of.
skate park.
Yeah,
Let's
all
do
the
it
way
right.
to a bowl to as full scale, I think.
Let's
as-
see what the options are.
Yeah,
Let's
I-
learn more
Absolutely.
about the
I just
options.
But we
wanna
need
see
a dedicated space.
suggestions for
Yeah.
where it's not gonna be a major impact on the view as it is.
Yeah, because if we don't have that, the parking lot and all these other areas will get taken over.
Okay, so,
What do you guys think on the skate ramp? Did you guys weigh in?
No, as a board, we need to see
Okay,
somewhere, somewhere.
somewhere.
Well, the status that we have right now is there is a skate ramp out there. And until and if Caltrans comes along and decides they don't want it there, it's going to be used. I think that it would be good to ask K&K to designate a spot of a reasonable size and think about a specialized designer, for
Yeah.
the park and have it be a priority but not immediate.
I agree. That sounds exactly right.
okay, any public comments on the active park amenities? Patrick?
I'm a big supporter of playgrounds, and if we're gonna do one, we have to do two. One is for the younger kids, one is for the older kids. The older kids run over the younger kids. If you try to mix it, it is from a safety standpoint, it doesn't work very well. And that's the other thing that we do have to build into the design, is that safety features, and they should be front and center in almost every discussion of what we're doing. So for instance, the playground, what's gonna keep the kids from running out into Obispo after a ball, or, so it brings up that issue of fencing, and maybe that's too too small of a scale to be thinking about at this point, but at least we should be thinking about fencing where it's appropriate. I don't think the community is supporting a fence around it, but fencing in certain places, like around the playground structure.
My guess is that a 3-foot-high split rail fence,
Right.
everybody would be
Right.
fine with that.
Yeah, that's all that I would suggest. In terms of a little bit of history, when I was on the Coastside Recreation Committee, we took some money that the county had from their building fund and used that to upgrade the fields at the schools. And they were really in great shape right after that, and then they've just steadily deteriorated. So we could make a significant difference, immediate difference, wouldn't take any long period of time if we dedicated some money to upgrading the fields that are used for baseball and for soccer. Those are the key needs. So I would strongly support.
At Al Granada School.
What's that?
Al Granada School.
Yeah,
Yeah.
El Granada School as an example.
Yeah, absolutely,
I know
yeah.
it's out of district, but those are all fields that we
Yeah, for
upgraded.
sure, totally.
And,
Absolutely.
Well, years ago, when Dave Holland was the county parks director, he, before we had Parks Authority, he asked if an El Granada Community Services District, which didn't yet exist, if we would support maintaining and improving the soccer fields at El Granada Elementary, and I said, I don't know, probably, but, we can't discuss it yet. And I asked him how much it would cost, and if I recall, he said $30,000 a year, and I said, probably doable.
Yeah, I was on that same group that you're talking about. But, we might consider this year, this time around, for water concerns and others, fake grass as an example. But in the soccer fields and in the schools, it's more year-round and so forth.
It has
So-
issues, fake grass.
What's that?
There's health issues and stuff about
Yeah,
fake
there
grass.
are
A lot of
healthy
places are
versions
starting
of
to,
it. There are unhealthy
starting to
versions of
take
it.
it out because of the,
Yeah.
yeah. It's not the panacea that it's that people think it is.
And then finally, we didn't mention dog walking, and I know that was in the passive part, but I wanted to at least make sure that we get that out there, because that is the #1 use of the trail, right next to us in Miramar.
Only if we hire an officer to issue expensive tickets for people that don't clean up after their dogs.
That's an issue I pick up a lot. So, but it's a major, if not #1, it's certainly #2 use of the trail. And then finally, I like Matthew's idea and others who are talking about having a site on our property, future site of skate park. I think it sends the right message to the community. We support what you do, and if we need to, this is where we're going to move it, and we thought this through. I think that'd be a great idea.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, anyone else on the active park amenities list? Nancy?
Quick comment. As I was thinking about the fence and talking about soccer, kids kicking something around, one of the things that K&K had on a display at our event were very creative walls, and where basically I'm wondering if on the lawn are those places where you could build up to your benches, built up for a view, and the wall along it, they have climbing things on them, or walls like that could be the skateboard walls that they use that they skate along. But I think we could do something pretty and utilitarian around the lawn that keeps balls from going out, that has another use for climbing or skateboarding, or something that blends into the space, so it doesn't have to be a 3-foot fence around it.
Let me mention, even though this doesn't fit anywhere on our agenda, the Sewer Authority is moving forward with expanding the underground storage, which right now is here, so it's going to be expanded over there, and that whole thing is going to be dug up probably somewhere around the end of the year. Yeah, do a big
We won't be
construction
ready.
project in the rainy season, that's good.
We won't be ready to do anything for a while.
But we'll always need to get,
Talk to Scott Boyd.
yeah.
No, I mean, in terms of park.
Oh.
But layout wise,
But
we'll need to be able to get to
But
that
we need to
area.
think about what exactly we might want to require for the way it's put back, because there's going to be 200,000 gallons of dirt left over, and maybe we don't want it spread around evenly. Maybe we want to say, well, put a bigger amount of it over here or something.
Yeah.
So, we have some limited options on how to influence exactly what happens there.
My only other comment was today I walked up to the park at Clipper Ridge, which does have a somewhat sad-looking half-court basketball court.
I thought the
So-
county was supposed to do something there.
They did.
And I know, I was there today, and
This is after the county did something there?
if they did something, it's not obvious what they did. I don't know what it looked, or I don't know what it looked like before, but I just wanted to park that as, another way that we can support a recreation site that already has the hardscape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that this board decided we would look into taking it over after the county finishes their upgrade.
Playground is beautiful, but the
Bill.
basketball is on the side.
So Chuck, Jonathan, and I are working on that expansion project and negotiating, because Sam currently has an easement where the existing tanks are. And so what we're doing is we're gonna renegotiate that easement to include the additional areas, and so we're gonna be bringing back to the board, ideas and recommendations on how to deal with that, so we can certainly take into consideration your concerns.
Yeah.
Well, we may
about
want
that.
some dollars set aside for revegetation that don't get spent immediately.
I suggest you watch the discussion at the second SAM board meeting in July, no, the first one in August, where we discussed and approved the design of the facility and spent half of that time discussing the revegetation. Because I'm still pissed that they didn't do it right on
Yeah.
the first part. There's still a bald spot there.
I just,
Well, they didn't do it right.
well, that's-
But I mean, to your point though, it is need to be, the design is important, that layout of it, because even the maintenance of that, every year, there's gonna be equipment and digging and things or whatever that go on
And
during those
it
time
does
periods.
affect somewhat the placement of our park stuff there, because there's these giant manholes.
Yeah.
And you don't really want somebody running across that, because then they might slip on the manhole
And that's been designed, yes, so we could get that to K&K, so they could see where the manholes were.
Yeah. Yeah, Sam would have those, it's probably in the public packet, but it's a little difficult to read a 500-page public packet.
Yeah, no, they have to get the electronic maps to,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
right? You need the electronic maps.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else on active park amenities? Really need to keep moving here. Okay, now for the most fun part, the other amenities. So we won't even talk about the one in red, Highway 1 crossing.
Although, what was your idea, you said the one time with the flags? Because here's where you were, the idea with the flags.
Oh, I wasn't proposing it for that.
Okay, but here's where I think it does make sense, even people get into Graywell Cove and things like that. I feel like good signage and explanation can solve like 80 to 90% of,
The
you
problem
know.
is that if we encourage people to cross at any particular point in any particular way, then we have serious liability when they get hit, and they will. So we're not gonna do anything to encourage.
Yeah, either way, it'd be Caltrans
If
project,
anything.
but we
need-
would
we need to
cooperate
put
with
a
them.
sign that says, don't cross here, you may get killed.
Yeah.
Seriously, you need to put up that sign.
Well, and then, I don't know if we can propose the trail along Route 1, but,
Well, the county may put it there, so that's why I said we need to wait and find out what the county's gonna do, and then we can decide what we're gonna do after we know what
because
the county's gonna do.
if that happens and we say we can say go down to the light. Otherwise, if we put in a trail along here as part of our plan, yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Now supposedly, and I haven't looked at the plans, but somebody mentioned that the fire district is putting in a sidewalk on their side of Obispo.
I don't know.
Hmm. That was on next door, so there's about a 20% chance that it's correct.
No, I think that is true. I think the drawings that they put out in their informational packet has shots from Obispo and shows sidewalk in front.
Okay,
I
so
think-
I don't have to suggest that we do it on our side then. If it's on the fire district side, that's good.
Yeah, they'll stop it at the repairing corridor.
Yeah, so how do people get there?
Yeah.
Well, when they sell us the corner for a reasonable price, then we'll just continue it all the way to whatever we're told. More parking, less parking, same parking, no parking's not an option here?
Four people said no parking, I lumped them in with the less parking people.
And you didn't count my no parking.
Well, four say, do you want me to split them out? Four of the ones on that list said no parking. So out of the 13, it's 9 less parking and 4 no parking.
So, yeah.
Well,
I look at if it's no parking whatsoever, there's gonna become de facto parking spaces that people are just gonna start taking it over, and it's gonna be wild, wild west in terms of people slowly.
we're already there.
Well, but I'm saying, we're, the parking I think it's more about how many do we have? Do we only have a few handicap and maybe a few other ones that are maybe even paid or whatever in terms of, I think it's more about that discussion of there's a little bit of parking that is just a bare minimum enough, and then there's kind of a lot of parking that some might say might justify based on the demand. I feel like, you know, I don't like to see it on the renderings at all, but it's just not realistic to think that once we put in this whole project, that there's gonna be less people coming to the area. You know, if anything, there's gonna be more people that are drawn to this little section, and parking's gonna just, people that wanna surf and everything else is
My
gonna become a
feeling
zoo.
is the land use plan, which is the governing document, not the zoning. Zoning is almost irrelevant in California law. It's the land use plan that rules. The land use plan says that is a park. It doesn't say it's a visitor serving parking lot. And so my feeling is that any parking that we provide there is specifically intended only for the users of our park, specifically not intended for visitors on land that isn't ours, meaning the beach, Sam's. Somebody needs to
Yeah.
force Sam's to buy the vacant land on both sides of them and stop using the highway for a parking lot.
I'd like to ask Pat Tierney about, you live here, you do this for a living, you know the layout of the land, the way parks get used. How essential is parking at all?
What about handicap? Don't we need handicap at a minimum?
Yeah, do we, you know, is that,
So-
in your experience, when you, right, you have to have a bathroom at the park. Do you have to have parking, and
So-
how do you decide what's enough?
I think parking is essential. It's how you manage it and how you design it that is the question. So design can minimize the free-for-all that we have now, make it not as many. In some cases, it actually increases the capacity because they're lined up properly. How you manage it in terms of open and closed hours, are there any fees associated with it? Because someone who's surfing all day, and I'm not picking on surfers, I surf, is gonna take up that space all day. That means nobody else in the community or otherwise can have that space. So
you do know that
maybe half the spaces could be 2-hour or a limited time so that you get enough turnover. So that's what I mean. I think parking is essential for all the, you know, you ask us as PAC members to be ears of the community. That's all I've heard unsolicited. You're not gonna cut out the parking, are you? You're not gonna eliminate the parking. And that's people who live here. So I think parking is essential. I personally think Concept 2's layout is a reasonable compromise on that. It does manage it, and if we design it properly, it will help the water quality, it will help safety, it will help in a lot of different ways.
Thank you.
Let me make sure everybody, particularly people watching on TV, understand that our property ends here.
Yeah.
So this parking area occupies basically 1/4 of the usable land that we have. So what I would suggest, if we're gonna allow any parking there at all, is some combination of what I'm about to describe. Probably step one is we charge for parking, and we adopt in our fee schedule, our official fee schedule, that the parking rate there is pegged to be the same as what's charged at the day use section of the RV lot, because he's charging usurious rates to keep people from parking there, so that the illegal permanent residents there, and all the permanent residents there are illegal. You're not allowed to live there for more than 29 consecutive days, and yet they're permanent. So we force the issue by charging the same for parking here as he charges over there. That's one possibility.
I would say set it at the rate of the other beaches that are charging in town.
No.
That'd be my comment.
I don't like that approach, not knowing what the other places are charging.
Depends on
I
the-
can't imagine they're charging more than he's charging here.
It's like $6 a day,
Okay, that's less than he's charging here.
I'm sure.
The other possibility, and I actually discussed this with Delia years ago, maybe even before we were Parks Agency, is have a fairly hefty parking charge, but anybody who comes into the office and presents proof that they're a resident of the Parks and Rec portion of our district gets a sticker good for a year that lets them park there at no charge, but a specific vehicle identified. So that way we're not charging our own constituents.
Yeah, I thought about that in terms of something that goes out. A vehicle might be tough, just the maintaining of people calling in, oh, I updated my vehicle, I just sold mine, I bought a new one. But I feel like, you know, basically then you're not sticking it to the locals in terms of people that do use it, can still use it, but to me, it's out of the question. We need parking. We need it for handicap. We also need it for like single parents come up in a minivan. You can't expect somebody it's a death trap to park way down in Granada, walk through with a family of little kids dragging them. That's where it's like, even if it's paid, at least, you know, if they have they could pay whatever that rate is for paid parking, but don't jeopardize that family from not, from being at risk, from not at least giving them the option. So I feel like we need the parking. It's a matter of how much and those details as far as, and maybe can we even, so I like 3 as far as putting some of the parking on Caltrans. Is that realistic, or that was just kind of thrown out there like, hey, that'd be cool? Do we have any indication if they would let us incorporate into their project for, a period of time to use their parcel for parking?
We don't know.
They won't.
So that's a long shot, that design of it?
That was a long shot.
Okay.
Yeah. But I did want to make a comment about parking. When we go after our coastal development permit and have to review this with the county, every other park project we've ever done, we have to, depending on the use and different activities on this park are going to have different use capacity. We're going to have to justify parking. We're going to have to show parking that meets those needs, whether it's on-street parking or on-site parking. We have to do a parking study.
So in the county zoning book, in the parking chapter near the front, it talks about you need this many parking spaces for an office building, you need this many parking spaces for a meeting room.
Depending on the capacity.
Do they have a section on this kind of park uses, need this many parking spaces?
Yes, we will have to go through a process. It may be subjective, but in every other park we've ever done, we had to show parking either on street and do a formula that kind of justifies the uses. In other words, if we put very high activity uses on this parcel, such as soccer or something like that, we'd have to show that there was adequate parking to meet those needs.
Well, that's why.
Not pickup soccer, but
that's-
organized soccer.
That's why I
Organized.
specifically said no organized
Right.
soccer.
Right, that was just an example
Yeah.
of a high activity use.
So, what you're describing, doesn't tell me that they can require us to provide visitor serving parking.
Well, no, it's gonna be, if this is a community park that has to service the facilities that are on the.
Right, the people using our park, that's the limit of how much parking I'm willing to consider is for the people using our park. And that explicitly excludes Surfers Beach. That's not our problem. The city and the county need to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, unless they wanted to, address it in terms of chipping in or otherwise, but how do you enforce it? That's the issue in terms of, we can't enforce it. It's more about,
Well, there's a lot of issues about management. I mean, when I was doing trails plans, we did a lot of surveys, and parking, trails don't cause a problem, it's unattended parking that causes problems. So this would have to be closed at night, which
Yeah.
means you need somebody to do it. Really should
Yeah.
be, if you want to
Well-
maintain this properly. I support that much parking, the
But
middle one,
this
right
one-
there.
So
Not, not,
that's slightly less.
unless and we're gonna
It's-
talk
it's
about the
slightly less
bathroom next,
space.
but maybe the bathroom also goes in that footprint right there, but that seems to me reasonable. It's an area that has a history of it, it's kind of separated, we can have the activities on the other side of the major stream, that's what I'm for.
Now, ultimately.
Anybody else?
Ultimately, since one of the justifications in 1998 for that miserable signal at Coronado, meeting in progress here. I'll call names, I know everybody's name.
I changed mine.
President Warren, could I make a note that you haven't broached the discussion of the next steps, and we do have some time.
Yeah.
So, moving on.
I forgot what I said. Oh, ultimately, the parking for Surfers Beach belongs over here on the Caltrans right away on the other side of Coronado.
So what do you guys think about parking?
What you said.
Okay?
And I think we should fence the highway side of our property,
Yes.
or else it's.
Big logs.
Or else it's totally useless.
Well, I do believe the board directed staff to get that blocked off.
It's, yeah.
And
it
she's
has-
not
it
there,
has
she's
to be.
working
It's
on it.
totally
We have
useless.
just enough logs to cover that one section.
So the property line between our property
Yeah,
and the
I-
right of way?
We have about 175 feet of log, and with the walkthroughs that we need in between each, it'll span that exactly one length of that section.
Okay.
Yeah.
All we need is a time when there's nobody parked in the way.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
Bash them out of the way.
so maybe, do we want to ask Steve to eyeball the parking chapter and estimate how many parking spaces we need
Sure.
to support?
I think we almost need another constraints map or constraints analysis of all the things that we've said we're for. I don't know exactly what next steps are, but
Yeah.
something that says, you know, these are some of your options. I don't think we're ready for another plan.
Yeah. Each
but I
time we
think
do an iteration, it's gonna change, but we need
Right.
the starting point of it. I was just to kind of summarize one interesting thing is, yeah, I mean, it is interesting how Half Moon Bay has all their beaches and does a great job providing parking for those, but Half Moon Bay has responsibility.
State beaches, Half Moon Bay has nothing to do with it. It's good in spite of Half Moon Bay.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I'm just saying on their end, how could they pretend that there's not a parking issue that we have to kind of solve for them? Because that is what's gonna happen, right? You could say it's only for us, but we are solving part of the beach traffic, that's who's gonna use it. I mean,
Because Half
so.
Moon Bay doesn't care about this part of the city. They just suck the revenue
Yeah.
out and will leave us with all the impact.
The other comment I was gonna say is how can we design it where we might have a little space and then we could kind of, since Caltrans so nonchalant, we could kind of have an overflow section on their space where, hey, if they eventually don't want people parking there, they could do something about it. But as part of our plan, we could allow enough room and kind of say, hey, if there is a need for overflow parking, here's a couple extra spaces that would work. And then, that kind of becomes a phase of our plan where if they eventually come in and change the use of that, but have it as an
I'm adamant
overflow.
that we should not have any more parking spaces than we have to for our community park. It's not a county park, it's not a state park, it is a community park.
It's just what's gonna
All right,
happen is,
let's
okay.
move on, let's move on.
Does Jim have an opinion on parking?
No, I appreciate what Pat's saying, we have to have some degree of parking there.
Okay.
But enforcement gets to be a big issue. I think it's gonna be unrealistic to say people going to Surface Beach. Unless you have stickers or something like that.
Yeah.
Really,
Well, am I wrong to think that with the third design, is that coming off Highway 1, you could turn right into that, right? I mean, that would automatically, if that was only one way coming in, that would reduce traffic and solve kind of a community issue, right?
People are illegally
terms of-
coming in there now, and they didn't used to be able to do that.
No, I know, but I'm just saying.
It's dangerous.
Whatever happens, people are gonna be yelling at us after this launches because traffic is gonna get worse if we don't have those type of solutions. 2 years after this launches, people are gonna be, traffic is gonna get worse. It's gonna,
Okay, to make my position
Yeah.
really, really clear.
Okay.
Let's put up a fence along there with a locked gate and give card keys to people in Old Granada to get through the gate. That's how I feel about this.
yeah, if that's
We're
feasible,
not
I
gonna
would.
provide Surfers Beach parking there, period. End of discussion. Moving on. Showers and bathroom, do we want to take those separately, or?
I think we need a bathroom, showers are more complicated just because of drainage issues, but
And if there's a shower there for people to wash off the sand, then who
It's
keeps
more-
cleaning the drain?
We're talking outside showers.
Our maintenance-
Outside showers are easy.
Yeah.
that's
We
about-
could, we
Our
could
maintenance
probably
People have to.
contract out to county parks, who's ever doing it for them.
Well, let me point out again that at the RV lot, before the current operator took it over, there was a restroom there, there was an outdoor shower there, and he was supposed to maintain those, and he did not. And the Harbor District, crooked as the day is long, allows him to violate the lease and not provide those facilities.
All of which has nothing to do with our land.
Right, but I think that a shower there is the wrong place. I mean, we're gonna get sand across the highway, we're gonna get sand on our property, we're gonna get sand in the shower drain. I think that's a bad idea.
Well,
You
showers,
can go,
stay-
you can walk through that parking lot any day and see people doing exactly what you're talking about now. So things aren't gonna really change. And if surfers wanna park, on the Caltrans side, we have to remember that a lot of these people are locals. They are our
An
constituents.
awful lot of them walk down from the hills
And
carrying
so,
surfboards.
yeah, and you can talk to them. A lot of them would like to be able to wash the sand off before they walk back up the hill. So,
There's a surf academy that's using it for that as well.
yeah,
So,
I don't think there's any question that we need
okay, let me ask
a
you this.
bathroom.
Would you support it if I said you have to put quarters in to keep the water running?
That's,
I don't know. You know, there are state beaches where I believe where they do that.
I don't know that we need to get into
Yeah.
that level of detail now. I mean, we definitely
Yeah.
agree on a
Oh, I was just
restroom.
curious to see if you would
Yeah.
support that.
Hot shower, I'm talking hot
And
shower
the
or
option
cold
for,
shower?
for
Cold shower.
outdoor showers.
Cold
And
showers, yeah.
let's have that as, let's talk about that as an option.
I guess
Look
that's a-
at what the
I
constraints
guess
are.
that's a
Is there
maybe
any-
because
Are
it's
there any
just a
drainage issues,
thin
you
little
know?
line
Don't,
of shower head.
doesn't there need to be more community input for this? I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's gonna be a real key.
Yes.
mhm.
But I think our inclination of all of us here is yes to bathroom and maybe,
Mm,
maybe
no,
to showers.
no.
You're
Let's back
against
that.
bathroom?
I am totally against building any building on that property for any purpose whatsoever.
That's
And,
what- that's what I'm-
and staff was directed like
we
a
know
year
that.
ago to send a letter to the sewer authority asking about the spider cobweb room at the pump
Right.
station.
Matthew, did you have a comment about that when, after we went over there? About using.
Tell me the letter's going out tomorrow.
Spider webs and junk is pretty accurate, yeah. But, I mean, you know,
Have you been in the room or just looking
Yes,
through
I
the
did
window?
remember that.
yes, yeah,
Yeah, because I've been in that room.
yeah.
But
It's
even-
pretty- it's-
yeah.
It's pretty awful, but,
But even with the remodel,
yeah, a
Crossing
remodel
the
and
street.
paint job and you have a bathroom.
although you still are forcing people to come all the way across two streets.
Well, no,
I mean,
because
it-
this is not intended to serve Surfers Beach. That's not our problem.
But-
We
but
need
it's
to
gonna
provide
happen, though.
for people using our.
But I'm talking, not theory, real world, what's gonna happen the first Saturday that's there. It's gonna be all, regardless of signage, enforcement, everything, there's,
Well, then if people are willing to cross two streets, but if you're saying they're not, then that.
well, I'm just
that's my
saying it
concern.
causes more traffic congestion, more safety issues. I mean, even in the sense you're
The
barbecuing,
right solution is to force open the existing restroom on the RV lot like it's supposed to be.
We have, 4 more items after
Yes.
this.
So I support a small restroom, kind of like the ones they have in some of the state park ones. I'm thinking of the one over on Airport Road, the small, it has two, I think it has 2 stalls.
Airport, you mean
We call it
the
the
post
secret.
trailhead?
Yeah, we call it the secret parking lot.
The post trailhead.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
On this property, probably near the parking lot, or in the parking lot, because,
Here?
well, maybe, I don't know, it would have to be located, that's not, I don't want to decide where exactly it should go. My inclination is to have it there, because it should be near the
Okay.
parking lot and not in the active part of the property. And in terms of showers, something to consider is having outdoor showers. And one last thing, which is if we were eventually able to buy the old firehouse it has restrooms in it, and if we turned that into a community center, or someday rebuilt a community center there.
That building would need to be majorly remodeled, and I would suggest that it be more cost-effective and beneficial to the community to knock it down to bare dirt and start over.
Maybe. That's a long-term thing. I'm just saying, right now, I mean, if we're asking what our feeling is, I support something near the parking lot.
Are we gonna get into the same issues with, at a certain point, depending on the project, we're gonna be required to have bathrooms there? Or can we get away with, so it's not,
Yes.
could be a moot point depending on the scale of our project,
What's gonna require it?
depending on the scale of the project.
Thank you.
They can't require us to put in visitor serving facilities. And I think that we need to provide appropriate facilities for people using our park.
And so what if that is a solution though, in terms of a partnership with Half Moon Bay where they do put in money, realizing that that is the.
No,
the
because Half Moon Bay can fix the problem like that by just ordering the Harbor District to open that publicly funded restroom that's being used as a laundry room. Half Moon Bay can fix the problem themselves very easily, they just don't want to.
Very good.
Nancy?
Families using our park and picnicking and having little kids on playgrounds, then they need a bathroom.
And Obispo is not as busy as some people are trying to claim it is. I have never had to wait more than 30 seconds to cross Obispo to get
Weekends.
between the Burnham Strip and the hardware store, post office, whatever.
People kind of, the weekends are kind of through.
Yeah,
So, well.
a
that's
stroller
another
and
issue
two
that we have the
5-year-olds.
county to
I
deal
know,
with.
but you can't deny that. It's Sunday afternoon, it's kind
That's a separate
of, so I
discussion.
understand, but that's us.
Fran?
I agree, I don't like the parking on that. I'd like to see it all park. I have an idea, if we can get if we do get the other part of the fire district property, the post office lot that we used to call it, we'll have we talked about an office building and community center on there, and then the part close to the park could be the parking lot for the park. And I think it's time the district really talk to Half Moon Bay now and the Harbor District to force them to open up that just like you said, what used to be surfer beach parking, it should go back to them and be open. That one section should be for free parking for surfers that always used it. But I think you're gonna have to discuss it with the district, with the Harbor District and with the city of Half Moon Bay to get them to do it.
Well,
It's time to do that. And the rest of the parking, beach parking should be, I mean, the Harbor District has what, 3 blocks of parking up there that is almost always empty except crab season and salmon season. And that's where beach parking could be.
I've been told specifically that the Harbor District's Lot C is full 3 days a year.
Yeah.
And it's a specific 3 days.
So you have to start negotiating with them. You can't just keep saying they need to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it brings up a great point in terms of, that's where I go back to interpretive signage. I think interpretive signage could be a very powerful tool in terms of directing people to say, hey, listen, if you want to experience the coast, you come and park inside the Harbor District, and that's where you start the beginning of your little trail tour. You see the first signs that talk about your upcoming walk. As you walk by Sam's, you see the next sign to your right. But no, but
Not on this agenda item.
okay, but I'm just saying in terms of,
Look, it's a 9:45.
And we can't put up signs saying, go park on that district's property.
well, I mean, it does bring up a good point. There is a ton of parking there that never gets used.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and.
Okay, so,
So next steps, I think maybe what we do is we sit down, maybe the subcommittee sits down with Steve and, well, the Burnham Strip Subcommittee, which is you and me,
okay.
Burnham Park, whatever, and comes back with a proposal for next steps. I think we have a lot of really good feedback here for what the board wants, and we need to keep this process moving in a way that we keep involving the community, and I'm not sure what will work, but I think we could probably come up with a proposal, what you think, for what a good potential next step would be to bring back to the board.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking that people generally need something to react to, and maybe we develop a plan that takes our best shot at what we're collecting from this board, and people are gonna.
And we do more outreach. Yeah.
Otherwise, if we have it written and we just have a list of items, people aren't gonna put that together and understand what the proposal is. It's, you know, you
Barbara, let me suggest that maybe Nancy should also be there.
I agree. That'd be great.
Since she's not a board member yet, there's no Brown Act issues with that. And maybe Patrick, if he can find the time. So the two of us, the two of them, and Steve.
Yep,
So,
and we'll bring a proposal back for the next step for this, which is gonna be consistent.
Yeah, I would like to see it moved along parallel tracks. I think you guys as a committee, I mean, it's such an integral part, the advisory committee, whatever they want to come up with on their end, you know, that they say, hey, this is what we came up with, this is what you guys came up with. Ultimately, I like the next step of modeling after what County Parks did. I thought they did an amazing job. Once they got to this phase, the next phase of it, they had this space, but they had it blank, and then they did cutouts of all their, they cut out a dog park, they cut out a skate park, or pump track, cut out community gardens, and they said, different working groups said, okay, each one of you guys build your own ideal, highest and best structure, and different groups presented it. I feel like that would be a good next phase in terms of the blending of you guys as the committee, them as the advisory, and then, you know, we met there last time, have the version of the meeting here, where it would be the interactive, like I said, anyone that went to that county parks meeting, you were there, that one, right, where they did the cutouts, and I think I was in your husband's group, and so I think that would be a really good next phase, and they did a really good job, I felt like, at that. And, you know, that one was held outside, we got locked out of the community service room we were supposed to be in.
Yeah.
And so that even on their, thinking on their feet, it still went very good, I thought. And there was really good conversations that kind of were sparked around, you guys build your own, each group build your own ideal park and kind of present it, and I thought that was.
You end up with the Moss Beach Park Camel.
I think this is a little different than Quarry Park. There's a lot more space in Quarry Park.
I'm just talking about the engagement of it in terms of, I think that's where.
I definitely think we need more community input. I think we need to be very robust about how we go about it, do it. I'm not sure that's exactly the way we do it, but why don't we come back with a proposal of how to do it and then see.
What's your guys' ideas for next community engagement part of it?
Well, that's what we don't know. We have to figure it out.
Well, what,
Make a proposal.
okay, what if, the five of us meet, and then Steve goes off and does a single new concept based on this meeting tonight, you know, with a little bit more help from the four of us, and then we bring that back to a heavily advertised meeting.
Yeah, that's one, I think that's a possibility. I guess the one thing is, it seems to me, sort of like what David's saying, that there's still some flexibility of where things should go, and there may be, when we get to discussion, like, oh, this could go here, or it also could go there, and if we just put it on the map in one place, we've kind of, people are gonna talk about yes or no. So, but I don't know the answer, but I'd like to say, it's getting late, and I think we can figure out a proposal that takes into account that locations of things. There may not just be one plan that with one location for everything we've talked about tonight that makes sense. We may want to come back and say, okay, on this one, it could either go here or here. I don't know.
Yeah.
We may need to be more flexible than just one more plan.
There are a lot of factors that are going to influence
Right.
where
Things can go.
things are located. Anything from topography to, like we talked about before, all the other impacts of neighbors, wind,
Drainage for some
drainage,
things, yeah.
all the manholes, all those things that are going to influence the location. So there aren't indefinite options on where things can be.
Yeah.
I think it is a lot more.
But there may be some
limited than
binary
what it is.
choices, you
Absolutely.
know, there may be some, we could put it here or there. So I'm not saying that we can't, in the subcommittee, come back with one proposal, but we might, after talking about it, decide we need two.
Whatever, I'm fine with whatever, I would like to see some type of community engagement, just similar to what County Parks did, where it's not saying, here's our plan, what do you guys think of it, but saying, let's build this plan together. Because what I do like is, I thought they did an amazing job on their constraints map, and I feel like that's where I'm kind of envisioning in terms of, that's already done already, that maybe a little bit adding on, and then cutting multiple cutouts of these to scale is where it really becomes a, helpful exercise to say, oh my God, we want all these things, this looks like a zoo, we can't.
But the scary part about that is that a lot of, if you break into different groups, a lot of people don't understand or fully comprehend
Yeah.
things. So somebody may put something in a totally inappropriate
For sure.
location that doesn't.
And the county didn't
Yeah.
really pay attention to what people said.
Yeah, no, I mean, it could be done better.
They gave
I'm-
people the illusion that.
Yeah,
was coming.
hey, well, hey, exactly.
And they
You know.
even put things in a completely different
Exactly,
place
I
that no
guess
one had ever advocated. So I
perception
can't say that
becomes
it's
reality.
necessarily the model
All right.
process.
But I would like to see somewhere along those
I think we can come up with a
lines.
good process, and I think it's really important, and we need to figure out how we're gonna get the community involved in the next steps.
See, but what the county does is they spend all the money planning and then there's no money to build. Item 2,
Is that, are we agreed?
Fran, did you want to say something, Fran? No, you're good.
Item 2, consideration of interest and participation levels in summer events program and possible continuation of programs. Hopefully we can keep this item really short.
Yes, I promise. In your packet, you have the information table that I prepared. I'm not going to go over it, other than to point out a couple of things. We have the yoga class that's coming up on the 8th. And under a number of prior inquiries, that came off the page views with Eventbrite. It was on Eventbrite. And it shows that there's actually quite a bit of interest. People were drawn to it. So far, we have 3 reservations, and hopefully we'll get a few more.
I spoke with Owen this morning, and they're expecting about 15
15 people, so
Is
there is
that
interest.
a minimum or maximum? The 15?
The 15 total people in attendance, yeah. So there is interest, I think, in the community. This was an experiment in some sense, but
Dale?
we only had 2 events that did not have anybody who registered, and those were mountain biking related events. So,
I'm sorry, there was 2 people that came to the mountain biking for adults, so I don't know if you heard that from Suzanne.
no, I haven't heard that. So there's some interest, but we got a late start, and for all those reasons that you know about. I think what PAC would like from the board is to say, let's continue exploring it, let's put together a program for summer, let us review it, and then we move forward. I would like to put a time frame of everything is complete by January 1, and so that we have time to promote and time to get the word out.
Like January
Trying to
30th.
get partnerships created, all those things that we didn't have this time. And I think it will be much more successful. So that's what I would like from the board, is just a nod in the direction of yes or no. And then secondly, there is interest by, some people have expressed interest in having a fall program that isn't on here, as an example. So I'm supportive of the fall program, 1, maybe 2 at the most. But again, the challenge is how do you promote it, how do you get it out, the word out effectively. But we have seen through the intro to yoga and Dale's programs that there is interest in the community.
Do you have time at the upcoming PAC meeting to come up with a list of suggested activities for the fall program?
I think that's a little bit a little bit premature because we haven't been asked to do that, so I don't know if anybody's really investigating it. You know, I looked at Half Moon Bays, I looked at Pacificas, and again, of course, they're larger communities, but I looked at the Recreation District over the hill. They have a pool, so that's different.
Highlands or Ladera?
Highlands Recreation District. So it is a district similar to what we are. And
Actually, they're significantly smaller, amusingly enough.
in area,
In population.
in population. So they're a good example of what ultimately we could be someday, but we have to take baby steps to get there.
They have really strong community support.
They do.
When LAFCO was going to consider their MSR and there was talk about merging them out of existence into San Mateo, LAFCO got buried in comments.
Right.
So my first question around this is, what was preventing us from before, the details of the insurance that wouldn't allow us to partner up with other vendors that are providing services?
We got the okay from them.
We did get the okay. Because to me, that's what's interesting, is that we provided almost all of these organically, and most other cities are just basically partnering up. We could, overnight, we could be doing kayaking and paddleboarding and all these things.
There might be a limit to the risk involved.
Yeah.
We have to run it by them.
For sure, and do background checks and screen that vendor, but,
The background checks are only required if they're supervising minors.
okay, so,
For the leaders.
but yeah, and that's where,
I think the first thing is we need to look at a list of possible.
well, my question to you guys, are you guys planning, as this continues, to continue offering this many organic programs being offered by board members and parks people, or more start outsourcing to other professional vendors to partner with?
Both. The reason why we did this is because of time.
Yeah, absolutely, no, for sure,
And
it's
so,
amazing.
I think in the long term, we will have to use vendors.
Yeah, okay. And so the next version of that, we probably will have more vendors in there. There's nothing stopping us, it's just, okay.
Right.
So in terms of doing a fall program, it's like, let me check my calendar. Oh, wait, fall's tomorrow. No, fall is, how soon?
Come and gone almost. Yeah.
We could do some of our organic, Barbara, Dale, other people that have history, just walks and, socialize them on next door.
Actually, I've had a lot of feedback of people said, I'm so sad I missed the walk. I really, really like you to do another one. So it'd be easy enough to do another
I
one.
suspect if you did that multiple times a year, you'll always have about the same number of people.
It was really
usually
fun.
different people.
Yeah, and I'd love to get in touch with some of the people with the old original houses and, have a little more detail on that.
In order
So-
to move on because of the time constraints, we can discuss it at the
Yeah.
park meeting. And
Yeah,
then
I
maybe
think
bring it
that's
back
fine.
to the next
Yeah, and I think you
So
talked about
let's-
that a little bit last time.
Let's give Pat a yes on his first point.
Absolutely, yes.
Right.
Yes.
The first point being,
Do you want us to
Start-
continue?
Yes.
Yeah, start developing, aim to have it all ready by January 1st.
Yes.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
what they might be able to pull together for fall, possibly.
I actually thought you were talking about fall next year, but
I mean, I think we're talking about
Well,
like 2 walks,
I mean,
like one a month.
I mean,
monthly
I
walk
look
of
at it
some
as
kind.
either, to me, the perfect
Yeah.
events are either a walk or a cleanup. I think if we did that every month, that ties into all the other programs, because then it's like, hey, this is a month, either the walk date where we're doing people are tagging along for history walks, or the cleanup. That's like that's where everyone's gonna tie into and be like, oh, remember 2 weeks away, we got yoga. Oh, next week is this. I feel like that's gonna keep the energy and keep everything
okay, so on the history
alive.
walk, everybody has to bring a grabber and we'll supply the plastic bags.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
Well, gentlemen, ladies, we'll work on it.
Yeah.
Get back to you.
Okay.
We got that. Let me move to the second one, which is prioritize parks and recreation needs list. Are we okay with that?
Because I can't hear you with the windows
The
open.
President Ford, you'd have to officially move that item up before the item 3. He's asking to move item 4.
I recommend that we defer item 3 to a following agenda. It's late, and that's going to take a long time, and I don't know that we're really ready to discuss that tonight.
I know.
I agree, I think we should punt it until our general manager is here.
So tentatively, can we put item 3 on the next regular meeting agenda?
Item can ask, yes, I think that's up to our student, I'm going to ask for.
I think it makes sense to have
So-
Chuck
so-
here,
So
for sure.
tentatively have that on the
So table
agenda.
3, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so item 4.
Okay, in the time, I just wanted to point out a few things. You notice we've really got a great start already on this. Many things are in progress, many things completed. We just got your go-ahead to start rebuilding a program for next summer. One thing I will mention is we're in discussions with Wilkinson School. They have a very good kids camp program, and so we're talking about ways to collaborate instead of compete with them. See if we can help each other out, which I think partnerships is what it's all about. So we're working. Is there anything on this list, committee members, board members, that you see as a very high priority that should move up or is missing or anything like that? Because then we can move in that direction if we need to at the next PAC meeting.
I don't know about time urgency, but I think number 2 needs full court press. And for those who don't have the sheet in front of them, that's explore lease of land from Cabrillo Unified School District for active and passive recreation on the El Granada surplus property. The part of that property would accommodate 2, I don't know sizes of soccer fields, but are there 3 sizes or 2 sizes? Soccer field.
There's at least 2
In
sides.
fact, you can have soccer fields all different sizes.
So Chuck Duffy and I walked that property a decade ago. And I said, could you put soccer fields here somewhere? And he points to one section that's higher up that's reasonably flat. And he said you could put a couple soccer fields there. Except I don't remember what size he said.
You developed a little report that showed
Right.
the activities,
So-
what size they were, you could implement that.
So the bottom line is I think that we need to pull out all the stops. One of the resources that you can tap into potentially is Rick Lohman. I don't know if his wife is retired yet.
She
Yes.
is.
She is? Darn. But in any case, there's some good relationship there between the Lohmans and the school board, so he was very interested in trying to facilitate something. Might have to wait until after Election Day in November to get any time from him. But I think that if we could get a lease for that property or some good part of it, that would help the district meet the active rec needs of the community.
Well, it's number 2 on the list, so I think it's.
Is this listed in any particular order?
Yeah, it's right.
Yes, I agree.
Oh, there's one thing I forgot about, and I didn't have time to go try and find what I read on this, but there was an article somewhere or other about, I think they called it micro parks, like 2,500 to 5,000 square feet, where there's some vacant parcel that the owner doesn't care about, and it's overgrown and junked up.
Number 12.
12.
Well, I'm not sure that this is the same thing as pocket parks, because what this article is talking about is even if there's no real use of the land, just having the community or a community agency fix it up and making it look nice just improves everybody's feeling about the community. And so I wonder if that's something that we should be looking into as an agency.
I think we have a lot going on right now. I think it's a good idea, but I think it's where it should be.
Yeah, I'm glad that beautifying lots for negligent landowners is number 12.
I just thought I'd bring it up. Okay.
All right,
We'll
I have a
mark that
couple-
as crash and burn.
We were thinking more about places like Miramar, where they're far from parks and little playgrounds.
Right.
Are there little lots of land?
Right.
That we
where
could
could
even
get a little
potentially buy.
playground? just to distribute.
That we could potentially buy. I mean,
Yeah.
we have a lot of things to do with the funds, but
And, well, and it is
Yeah.
important to remember that this district isn't just El Granada, it does include Miramar and Princeton.
I know.
Can I just mention that one of the points of PAC putting together their priorities, is for them to tell you what their priorities are
Right.
as the, coming from the community. And then it will be presented to the board for the board to discuss the ranking that you prefer at the end. So I referred, again, because of time constraints, if we could not address each issue on this list, it was just a preliminary. This has not been presented to the board. PAC did approve it, but so much has occurred over the last several months that they're going to be updating it on September 11th when they meet. And
so they'll bring it
hopefully
back
they'll have
again.
priorities for us to submit to this board to review and discuss September 20th.
Okay, I have just two quick comments. Number 3, benches and picnic tables, that's also in progress because it's
Yeah.
something you're gonna look at. The samples that are gonna be for median 7 and 8 are gonna be applicable to other places. And for number 9, I don't know about the word liaison. We don't have an official role on the Quarry Park Master Plan. Many of us as individuals and as people very involved in GCSD in different ways have attended those meetings and so forth. But the Quarry Park Master Plan is a county plan, not something that we actually play an official role in, and I think it's important to have that distinction. So, maybe liaison is
I
okay.
think they are looking to us to help fund the contract.
Yeah, so-
We
Yeah.
have made that commitment, but that doesn't mean we're
Uh,
part of the planning process. We have
I
said we will
have
fund.
I have comments to tie those two things together on the
Yes.
next agenda item.
Okay.
So,
Those are
looking
just
at
my
the
two
list,
comments.
I would, without going into any
Where's your
specifics.
pickleball?
I'm gonna say list looks reasonable to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're going to update it.
Any other directors?
Yeah, I was just thinking, because I know we've talked in between about different frustrations with some of the trash issues. So how trash fits into all of this and, in general, like people have said, there's a bunch of videos going around of how the winds come in and blow all the trash stacked up at surfers, getting more trash cans there. And then so into this plan as well, the trash impact, because I almost feel like,
That's.
well, it's going to become a part of it.
Let's just punt that over to the sanitary district side and.
Okay, that's fine. Then we should make that an agenda in general.
If we have time on the next regular meeting agenda, let's talk about trash cans.
Okay.
But like I said, if we have time, I don't know what else is scheduled for that agenda
I'm
yet.
not sure either, so.
We will look forward to your reprioritization.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Great
thank
work.
you.
Okay, item 5. Is there any status to report other than what's in the printed report?
I just say, on the volleyball project, it does seem like a good project, and there is some space there for recreation. Again, we have a lot going on right now, but it does.
But our involvement on that was supplying the $5,000.
I know, and nothing's happening, so, I just want to keep in mind that that is a part in our district that we could help fund something on. I think it's good to bring it up.
Well, not could, but agreed to.
Yes.
And yet,
I think that was
You're
before
still
me.
working on it.
seems to have fallen through a crack.
Contact
Well-
us, we'll follow through. I think that's best we can do.
Who knows Neil? I don't know if I have a current phone number for him.
I know some of the people were at that meeting that night I could reach
can go
out
down
to.
and talk to, the general manager of the Harbor District and ask him maybe if he,
Right.
he's-
That's such a long walk for you.
I just haven't had any.
Okay, the one, all right, let's go in that order here. So anything else besides what's written here? Nothing? You don't know anything? Nobody knows anything about Clipper Ridge basketball?
I mean, so Clipper Ridge, I remember Sam, a while ago now going, okay, there's an idea, we could do that in a couple months. We'll put together the agreement, you guys take it over, this is,
I thought the
No, I
county
don't
actually
think
had
they
it
were gonna take it over,
scheduled.
But they were gonna fix it up.
I thought they had.
The night he came and spoke, he was talking about us taking it over, that they would, and so I'm,
But that was after they completed what they were planning on doing.
Before she left, she had mentioned that there were plans to actually do some actual improvements. It was my understanding that they
Yeah.
did them, maybe so
Done.
much time has elapsed, it's already been all used up, I don't know, but, yeah. The HOA was talking about dissolving as well, which was another reason why they were asking us to maybe take over. I can contact Jeanette Ward, who is
I think the HOA exists primarily to support the park, and it's now appropriate for us to do
But
that.
they didn't have enough people interested to really, keep it going. But I don't know the status, like I said, I haven't heard from them in quite some time.
So.
I can reiterate what Nancy said earlier. I went over and took a look at it too, and if that's the county's idea of finished improvements, they should not have done anything.
Okay, well, one way or another, can someone find out whether the county actually did it or not?
And can we find out the
There
details?
is actually a rim on the basketball pole now and a net, which
It does have a net.
it was that is an improvement from what it was. But there's a big pine tree right there that limbs come out into the basketball court.
There's no lines.
And there've been fights over in the community, whether they should do anything to that pine tree. And,
Yeah, like cut off some of the limbs.
The story I've heard is that there was just so much disagreement with the Coconut community over there, that the whole thing fizzled.
Okay, well, here we have an elected board that gets paid the big bucks to make those decisions. So,
Go for it.
yeah, we need to,
So would we have to go to
Let's find out.
the HOA if it still exists and make a proposal?
well, I heard Jeanette Ward is no longer the president, and that's why the HOA is kind of
It's
just
another
flittered
person.
away.
They've had meetings here, and I can talk to them.
I'm still confused about the details. So right now, how much approximately, I'd like to know how much County Parks is putting into it as it is the last couple years, and then what that figure is, and then our own estimate of what it would take to have it, up to scale. Because without that, I'm kind of confused of what the vagueness of the agreement is that we would take
I'll
over.
get some information and come back with a report.
Yeah.
Okay, the last item on the list,
Quarry Park
Um,
pump track.
the letter that was sent is included here, and I'm not happy with the letter because my recollection is that the board agreed to provide funding subject to us approving the location that's selected for
Well,
it.
And
there is a
details.
comment about appropriate location.
That's not strong enough.
Oh.
Specifically, I think the board said, we want to see the location before we actually hand over money.
In bureaucratese, that's what this says.
Yeah.
That's not the way I read it.
It's a vague starting letter, but I think, I would like, obviously, we're not limited, we're limited at a certain financial amount. We want
I
to
have a
prove
lot more experience
location
dealing
and
with this
area.
county, and the way they're going to do it
No,
is they're going
yeah.
to present a final plan and say, here's what we're going to do.
No,
That's
I'm
not-
agreeing with you. I think this is a good first letter, the vagueness. The next letter that we send out should have more of those
I
details.
think we're gonna get closer.
Yeah,
Well,
and what, the-
Every iteration of the plan has had the pump track in a
Yeah.
different place. Some of them awful.
yeah,
And because this board by definition is more in touch with the community.
yeah,
This board really needs to have the last word on whether it's in the right place. And the way we exercise that influence is we say, if we don't like the location, we're not gonna fund it.
yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's, the way that they came out and said it, verbally, was this is your guys' project. You guys are the ones paying for it. You guys, if you guys want to spend, X amount, that's up to you guys. But yeah, get in writing that, yeah, we're not giving them a blank check. This is our project, the location, the size, the scale, all that, how much money we're putting into it.
Well,
We need to have control over that.
Did we specify any amount of money? I don't think we did.
I don't think we did, no.
I'm more concerned about the location than the design. So,
I'd also like to see some discussion of how they're going to manage potential community impacts of the pump track.
well, supposedly, people are gonna ride their bicycles to it.
Well, I don't know. Well, we all have concerns about the impacts on that neighborhood.
Okay, so we want the county to put up a sign that says, no parking anywhere near here for the pump track.
Well, and certainly no evening use, certainly, there are some sensible.
Well, I think there's no night lighting at Quarry Park, right?
Right.
There's no night lighting at Quarry Park, and I don't think there ever will be.
I'd like to see them not advertise it regionally.
Yeah, well, that's why, and this
I know,
didn't go
it's a
anywhere.
tricky
but
issue, but-
When we were discussing becoming a community services district, I said that we need to be at least the managers, if not the owners, of the lower part of Quarry Park, the flat part.
That'd be great.
But that didn't go anywhere, because the county provides basically no public parks except for the Moss Beach Park and Quarry Park, but then they advertise Quarry Park as a county park. So they're still not providing any community parks here. But they want to hold on to that, I figure, so that they can say they're doing something with parks here.
But they call it a regional park. They made the point, it was
Right,
that it's a regional
right.
park, which is really not fair to the people who came together to save it.
Right. Fran?
Well, that's what I wanted to say.
Sorry.
Is to remind you that it's a regional park now. You know, the county, God, we worked for 15 years for that, and 20, 30 years to get it in the first place, for a community park. And now that the county took it over, they've turned it into a regional park. So you're not gonna stop people, and I see them coming in, different groups, 30, 40, 50 people at a time from all over the Bay Area on the weekends to go hiking or bicycling or one thing or another. So it's really growing, and I just wonder whether we should spend district money to help them for the whole Bay Area.
Well, but the visitors aren't going to be using the pump track.
Oh, sure they will. Once that gets established, if you established a real track in there, I think they're gonna come from all over, like the people here go wherever a pump track is.
Well, footnote, I talked to father and son years ago who were here using the skate ramp, and they were from Pacifica.
Yeah, that's.
And
people come
they
from
told me
all
that
over.
people come from long distances to use this skate ramp.
Yeah, and there's a whole online community
And
about pump tracks.
Just,
And it
just
will-
as an aside, I remember when we tried to form a district-wide, coast-side-wide park district back in 1994, we did that. And,
There's your E.
and Montera, Moss Beach turned it down for $1 a month, because who wants to go to Quarry Park from Montera? No, nobody's gonna go there from here, you know, so, and here they're coming from all over the Bay Area now.
Well, the tax was much higher in El Granada to buy Quarry Park, and $12 a month everywhere, $12 a year everywhere to pay for running the district. And so the people outside of El Granada didn't want to pay $1 a month to have the district that initially was only going to own Quarry Park.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
We're at the end of the agenda, so we're
So
adjourned.
the last,
One question, yes,
Yeah.
because I do need to leave. My question is, all these wonderful lists that we've had, we've just got lists that you presented, another list that's presented. Is there some way that can be made available so other people that live in El Granada can take a look at it? Could it be on your website or something like that?
Well, some of it's in the packet, and anything that's not in the
Yeah, it's
packet.
on
You mean the priorities list for the Parks Committee?
That would be one place.
That's-
but also
that's in the packet.
The list that you gave today.
Yeah, this one, yes.
That's all on the website?
It's on the website.
Okay, great. And will people know the difference and will they know how to
Well, is it in the
communicate?
Parks and Recreation part of the website?
Go to
No.
our website and you go to agenda for the meeting that's coming up.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't think just throwing it up there is sufficient if you want to get
I agree.
input from people.
I think you're right, yeah.
So
Yeah,
making
So-
sure that people understand, and
Maybe
also
we
what
can
the
post it on
status
the
of this
Parks and
is.
Recreation page?
So
That would be great.
maybe the Parks and Rec,
That would be good.
maybe the Parks and Rec page could have a link into, I don't know if you can link into the packet, you might have to put that document up
I don't
separately.
know, but I think we very much need to separate the PAC agendas and minutes from the regular
Yes.
board,
Yes.
because I get them confused all the time, so I would imagine it's gonna be confusing for
But I bring
everyone.
that up too, because if you want public input, and you want to say more input, and also if you want to let the community of El Granada know what you're doing,
Right.
that would be really
Yeah,
helpful.
maybe.
Because a lot of
Well,
times
the-
people don't know.
The priorities list went out in the newsletter, and I believe is posted on the Parks part of the website. So the priorities list, but I think it would be really great to do the Burnham park report on
Yes,
the
that would be
parks
great.
page.
Yeah, not in the agenda or packet, but
Right.
just on the page itself, added to the page.
Had a link somewhere, yeah.
So, and then the last item, I think, you know, to me, this is, I mean, to me, this is important in terms of better understanding. I think, Gail was the one that originally brought it to my attention, you know, 4 years ago, talking with her in terms of the power of the Friends of and the community engagement side of it, the fundraising side of it. Where it was interesting to me, I was at the one event in Sacramento, and specifically the lady talking about it said, say for example, you do Parks and Recs for your district, and you want to do this really cool project, and you have all these volunteers, you know, some of them own construction companies, whatever, and they say, hey, we'll bring our whole crew out, we'll do it for $5,000. It would cost, you know, $100,000 if you went out to bid. That's totally fine. That's 100% legit if it's run through the 501c3. You know, everyone signs off that they're volunteering. You can have a payment for materials.
Did you read the note in the packet about 501c3?
Well, I'm talking about the presentation. The next step would be, I'm not an
Yes, no
expert.
question, did you read the note in the packet?
Yeah, I did, and that's why I'm bringing it
We
up.
can do that without the formation. We can do what you're.
The volunteer procedures.
Yes, without the
Okay,
formation.
and so the only other element to that though is because I do see it as, you know, I see it as a tool for that. I see it as a powerful tool for the fundraising side of it. So when we're doing these projects, whether it's Friends of, you know, Friends of each median has their own, you know, separate, Burnham's trip. I think we could get a lot of community funding that will drive the reality of some of these projects. You know, I don't want to say we're going to do this crazy skateboard project or whatever if the money's not there. I think in terms of, you know, I think there's a lot of support behind that this could help take some of our projects to the next level in terms of, you know, both the initial funding of it, but then also the maintenance of it in terms of the power of the Friends of group, that there's ownership in that in terms of people having pride, taking care of it, maintaining it. Slowly those die out as people move. There were, you know, leaders in that, but I
This whole
think,
thing is gonna be a learning process for us because we haven't done
Yeah.
it before, but we're gonna be looking at learning and doing what.
yeah.
And setting up a 501c3 and doing these things, I've done it several times, and I've done a ton of nonprofit fundraising. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
That's right.
Yeah.
you
And
need a
so,
dedicated board, you need bylaws, you need articles of
Yeah.
incorporation,
Well,
you
we
need
can-
all those things, so,
So the district can, you know.
Right.
First of all, people can volunteer,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah.
And secondly, the district can accept donations and can accept money.
right.
And it can be tax deductible.
Yeah.
So it's just a different part of the internal
Yeah,
revenue.
her thing was for this is a new law that was going into effect for prevailing wage, if it's a project over $25,000. So that was the exact scenario where, but whatever. I think, to me, there's, the next question though is the synergies from that. What is, if you see no need for us setting up a 501c, what is the level of cooperation with a Friends of group, setting it, you know, an outside group?
That's what I'm saying, it's a
that-
really lot of work to set one up.
Yeah,
And
I
who's
mean-
gonna do that work? Are you volunteering?
I think, you know, the same way that Friends of Quarry Park, there would be much more support around that idea because, you know, I just talking Quarry Park, you know, whether it's the medians and everything else, I think it's a whole separate discussion in itself. But I feel like that's kind of the catalyst, which is gonna initially get some funding for some of these things, and then is gonna sustain the maintenance end of it, in terms of, you know, and so the next question I was asking you is, you know, how does that work? You know, I'm not sure in terms of our cooperation with an outside Friends of Burnham Park, you know, that was started by, you know, outside members. How does that work?
My feeling on that is that if a Friends of group is gonna form, it's gonna be somewhat organic, and at that point, they can come to us and see what kind of official organization might need to be set up. But until something like that happens, I don't think we need to discuss it.
And it's complicated because when you have a friends group or you have an education foundation, you know, how they do their funding for, say, parks that belong to another entity is tricky too. You
Yeah.
have to have policies in place and you have to have procedures of how you decide where the funding's gonna go. It's,
Yeah, and like I said, I think as long as we have those detailed policies and procedures, she made it seem like that wasn't even enough in terms of, in her example.
Well, I think Director.
But I'll reach out anyways, and I think it's just interesting to explore, because that is, to me, the biggest piece of all this is
isn't really
that,
on tonight's
But I think
agenda.
Director Dye is correct, it's a lot of work, and it's a separate
Yeah.
entity, it's a wholly separate entity, we wouldn't be creating.
for sure,
this.
especially we don't need to, if what she said isn't true, then absolutely,
What
there's,
she said is true, but it's not necessarily appropriate for our situation, is what I think. We have the mechanisms in place to do the things.
well,
that-
the one time that it would come up, though, is say that there was a pump track, and we, in that example, she was saying that that's over 25,000, you have to pay the whole project prevailing wage for every single trade that touches
We can
it.
have council look into that at some point when it's
So-
necessary.
That doesn't get you out of prevailing wage.
What's that?
A 501c3 does not
Okay,
get you
this
out of
is not
prevailing
on the
wage.
agenda, so we
Okay.
are adjourned.
Good night. Sorry.
It's the last one on the agenda.
Yeah.